Chapter 2853. Next to Senior Sister Ching Yu's name, it was marked Spiritual Lord. In other words, Senior Sister Ching Yu was now a big figure in the ancestral court of the Spirit sect, comparable to the deacons of the 3 pavilions of the Yuan sect. Realizing this, Lin Sun couldn't help but be surprised. It seemed that the situation of the 3rd senior sister in the Spirit sect wasn't bad. This was, of course, a good thing. I have to find some time to have a good chat with Senior Sister Ching Yu, Lin Sun thought. The next morning, in the center of the Yuan realm, accompanied by a roar, an ancient Taoist field slowly rose from the ground, and countless rays of light shot out, straight into the sky. Between heaven and earth, there was a faint ancient sound of the great Tao. When the dojo was revealed, the surrounding area was immersed in an uproar. Tianqi Dojo. It was a Taoist field personally refined by the Yuan sect master at the beginning of the establishment of the Yuan sect. It was said that it was made by gathering the origin of the 9 great chaos, mixed with 3,000 kinds of immortal divine iron, and tempered with supreme magical power. Since ancient times, every 1,000 years, the 9 Peaks discourse would be held in the Tianqi Dojo, and every time a group of dazzling peerless figures emerged. For example, those big figures who held important positions in the 3 pavilions and 9 Peaks had all participated in the 9 Peaks discourse when they were young, and all of them had shown in the Tianqi Dojo. At this time, the leaders, elders, and descendants of the 9 Peaks had all appeared in the 9 areas near the Taoist field. On the other side of the Taoist field, a beautiful cloud platform was built. This was the viewing platform. The messengers from the 3 ancestral halls of the Spirit sect, the Witch sect, and the Zen sect, as well as the big figures sent by the 10 immortal giants, had already taken their seats on the cloud platform. Any one of these big figures had a monstrous power that was enough to make people awe and look up to them. In addition, there were also some old antiques from the top forces of the 7th heaven, each of whom was above the Nirvana realm. There were also characters at the heavenly longevity realm, but they were only embellishments and foils. Just the lineup of messengers and spectators was already so luxurious. One could imagine how great the influence of the 9 Peaks discourse of the Yuan sect was. Not far from the viewing platform sat the big figures of the 3 pavilions of the Yuan sect. Vice Pavilion Master Xian Feiling, Fu Wenli, and Qi Shaoyun. Vice Pavilion Master Duguyong, Yuan Wutian, Qi Wen. Yuan Qing Pavilion Vice Pavilion Lords Fang Daoping, Yu Xing, and Tang Qiu. They were all seated. Below them were the elders of the 3 pavilions. As for the deacons and vice-deacons of the 3 pavilions, they were distributed around the heavenly enlightenment square. A portion of them maintained the order of the 9 Peaks of the Tao discussion, and a portion of them were responsible for various matters related to the Tao discussion. Lin Sun was assigned to stand beside Tao Ling at the side of the Tianqi Dojo, and he was responsible for maintaining the order of the 9 Peaks discussion. That being said, there was nothing to do at all. Big shots were densely packed in the vicinity of the heavenly enlightenment Tao ground, and there was a large group of them. Who would have the gall to dare cause trouble here? As far as Lin Sun knew, there were 9 transcendent-level old guys who came to watch the ceremony. Apart from that, there were more than 60 Nirvana gods. This was a number that could make the entire eternal true world tremble. If such a force gathered together, they could sweep through the world. Just think about it, the 4 great ancestral courts, the 10 immortal giants, and some of the top forces in the 7th heaven. Unless the eternal gods in the 9th heaven took action, this was enough to represent the strongest, most prosperous, and most terrifying force in the eternal true world. At that moment, the atmosphere was solemn and silent. Lin Sun was fine. He did not have the right to participate in this kind of discussion, so he was very calm. The core heirs of the 9 Peaks were all excited, and their eyes were filled with eagerness. Everyone knew that the Tao discussion was a huge stage. As long as they performed outstandingly, their names would spread far and wide. Lin Sun looked at the grandstand. There were many big shots sitting there. If an ordinary person looked at it from afar, they would definitely feel shocked, as if gods had descended upon the world. Even Lin Sun's heart was filled with awe. Those big shots might have restrained their auras, but each of them sitting there was like a god sitting in the 9 heavens, and each of them was stronger than the last. Lin Sun noticed that there was a familiar figure sitting in the Dhyana sect's ancestral court. Buddha Supreme Shi Yi. Lin Sun's pupils shrank. 2 months ago, he, Pu Zhen, and Shui Ye were fighting against the other party. Who would have thought that the other party would openly come to the Origin sect's ancestral court? Moreover, he was the leader of the Dhyana sect's ancestral court messengers. Shi Yi had the cultivation of the transcendent realm. When Lin Sun looked at him, he immediately sensed it and looked up. When he saw Lin Sun's figure in the distance, Shi Yi smiled slightly, put his palms together, and nodded at Lin Sun from afar. His expression was calm and tranquil. There was not a trace of strangeness, nor was there a hint of murderous intent. It was too casual and calm, as if he had met an old friend. The big shots near the grandstand all noticed Shi Ye's movements and couldn't help but look in the direction he was looking at. So it's him. Lin Sun, Lin Daoyuan, we finally meet in person. Interesting. This is the lotus that the Master of the Heart Core has been waiting for. Unfortunately, the Master of the Heart Core has already suffered in the 9th heaven. I'm afraid he won't be able to see the little disciple he has been waiting for. The legendary Immortal Supreme Road is like a legend in the 9th heaven. I don't believe that such a path would appear on the successor of the Heart Core Mountain. The voices of discussion resounded. These big shots came from different forces. Their words were casual, calm, and not sharp. However, this made many people who noticed this scene unable to remain calm. Perhaps it was the first time for the big shots in the grandstand to see Lin Sun. However, they had already heard and understood about Lin Sun before. This was already shocking enough. In the entire world, among those in the same realm as Lin Sun, there might not be another person who could be remembered by the 3 ancestral courts, the 10 immortal giants, and other major forces. Noticing the gazes of those big shots, Lin Sun also felt a wave of pressure. The owners of those gazes included Transcendent Realm Big Shots and Nirvana God Realm Old Antique. When their attention was focused on one person, the pressure was unimaginable. Fortunately, these gazes were extremely restrained and didn't carry any pressure. Soon, Lin Sun saw senior sister Qingyu. She wore a plain long dress, and her delicate figure sat in the spiritual church's ancestral court's camp. Her hands were crossed in front of her knees, and her jet-black ear-length short hair accentuated her snow-white and delicate skin. Her facial features were delicate and beautiful, and her big eyes were as bright as the stars in the sky. She looked like a pure and innocent girl next door. When she noticed Lin Sun's gaze, she blinked her eyes and smiled faintly. There was a kind of reserved charm to her. After thinking about it, Lin Sun suddenly waved his hand, signaling Qingyu to come out and speak. Qingyu was startled and turned her head to look at the man on the side. The man was wearing a Taoist robe, with his hair tied up in a bun, and holding a horsetail whisk. His appearance was delicate and strange. He was one of the spiritual church's ancestral court's 10 great spiritual elders, Qin Yun. Go. Qin Yun nodded slightly. Qingyu got up and left the grandstand. This scene was seen by many people. Some frowned, some pondered, and some looked at Qingyu with a trace of coldness. Qingyu didn't care about this at all. Lin Sun naturally wouldn't care. Everyone knew that he and Qingyu came from the Heart Sect. Since there was a chance to meet, he naturally wouldn't avoid anything. Deacon Tao, I'll take my leave first. Seeing senior sister Qingyu walking over, Lin Sun smiled and asked to leave, planning to take Qingyu back to his cave residence. I know you don't care about the 9 Peaks discourse. Go. Tao sneered and waved his hand. Lin Sun nodded and left straight away. Senior sister, this way to my cave residence. Lin Sun said to Qingyu with a smile. Qingyu nodded and followed. Her jet-black ear-length hair fluttered with her steps, adding to her beauty. The two left on their own. This scene was seen by many people. The bigwigs of the Yuan Church were all startled and had different expressions, but no one stopped them. When they arrived at Lin Sun's cave residence, Qing Yu let out a long breath and seemed to be much more relaxed. "Senior sister, were you nervous before?" In the cave residence, Lin Sun smiled and poured tea for Qing Yu. Qing Yu lowered her head shyly and said, "I was indeed a little uneasy." Lin Sun was startled. He had heard from Jun Huan that Qing Yu was introverted and shy, but he didn't expect that she was already at the immortal level. How could she be so shy? "It's okay. This is the Yuan Church. We didn't do anything shameful, so we don't need to care about their opinions," Lin Sun said with a smile. Qing Yu nodded and held the tea Lin Sun handed over with both hands. Her star-like eyes drooped, looking obedient and silent. This made Lin Sun have an illusion that he was not facing Qing Yu, but an obedient baby who needed his protection and concern. It was so lovable. "Junior brother, why did you call me here?" The atmosphere was a little subtle and dull. Qing Yu hesitated and asked in a low voice. "Well, nothing. I just want to ask about you and third sister in the ancestral court of the Spirit Church," Lin Sun said. Qing Yu's voice was gentle and clear, but she still lowered her eyes and said, "We are all very well. When I came, third senior sister said that if she saw junior brother, she should tell you not to worry about us. Senior brother Pu Zhen and junior brother Xue have already told everyone about your recent situation." Knowing that Pu Zhen and Xue had already met third sister, Lin Sun immediately relaxed a lot and said with a smile, "That's good." After saying that, he didn't know what to say for a while. Qing Yu really gave him a different feeling. It was like facing a well-behaved and shy girl. He was afraid that if he said something wrong, he would be rude to her. It felt weird. Thus, the atmosphere became subtle and dull again. "Well, senior sister, don't you have anything to say to me?" Lin Sun finally couldn't help asking. Qing Yu was startled and put down the teacup in her hand. After hesitating for a long time, she said in a low voice, "Junior brother, I have been cultivating with Master since I was young. I have never understood what love is, so I'm afraid." "I'm afraid," Lin Sun was stunned. "Afraid of what?" Qing Yu's delicate and beautiful facial features were flushed like a burning sunset. She seemed to have gathered up her courage and said, "I'm afraid I will let you down." After saying that, she lowered her head as if she wanted to bury herself on the ground. She was extremely shy. Lin Sun felt like he was struck by lightning. Chapter 2854. What the hell was going on? Lin Sun was confused. His expression was sluggish and his eyes were fixed. Lin Sun didn't speak for a long time. When she carefully peeked at Lin Sun's uncertain expression, Qing Yu suddenly became worried. Could it be that Lin Sun was hit too hard? She couldn't help but ask, "Junior brother, are you okay?" "It's all my fault. I shouldn't have said this as soon as we met. I apologize." Her delicate and fair face was full of guilt and uneasiness. Lin Sun finally came back to his senses and quickly said, "Senior sister, listen to me. What you said just now, what did you mean?" Qing Yu's expression became more and more worried. Lin Sun must have been hit too hard and couldn't accept it. What should she do? She gently bit her pink lips and said in a low voice, "Junior brother, calm down first. I'm not rejecting you. I'm just worried that I'm not as good as you think. I'm afraid I'll let you down." Sigh. "I don't know what to say. It's just that I need to think about this matter bit by bit. I can't promise you at once. Now, you should understand, right?" Lin Sun's expression became more and more strange. His mind was in a mess. After a long time, he rubbed his stiff cheeks and said, "Senior sister, this should be a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" Qing Yu's beautiful clear eyes widened. "Yes," Lin Sun affirmed. "Senior sister, may I ask about this matter you mentioned? Who told you? Wasn't it you?" Qing Yu was also a little confused. Lin Sun smiled bitterly. Since I entered the seventh heaven, I've been cultivating in Yuan sect. I never knew there was such a thing. Qing Yu said in a daze, but Junior Martial Sister Juanhuan sent me a message, saying that you've been in love with me for a long time and that you've been longing for me for many years. If you still don't pour out your heart to me, I'm afraid that it will affect your state of mind of the Great Tao. If that happens, it's very likely that it will affect your path of attaining immortality. So, you let Junior Martial Sister Juanhuan send me a love letter. Lin Sun's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. He gritted his teeth in hatred. So it was Senior Sister Juanhuan's doing. What love for a long time. What unrequited love. What pouring out one's heart. What love letter. How could he do such things? It was definitely her doing. No wonder Senior Sister Qing Yu was so shy when she first saw me. It turns out that she treated me as the object of her love to confess her heart to her. Lin Sun finally understood everything. For a moment they wished that they could capture Jun Huan and teach him a lesson. Wasn't this just messing around? Qing Yu asked in confusion, Shitty, is there something wrong with this? Lin Sun smiled bitterly, deliberated over the wording, and finally told his speculation. Hearing this, Qing Yu's charming face became hot and bright red. Thinking of what she said to Lin Sun before, she wished she could find a hole to hide in. This was too embarrassing. Junior Sister Juanhuan is really too infuriating. Qing Yu said angrily and shyly, when I see her next time, I'll definitely get third Senior Sister to teach her a lesson. Yes, we must teach her a lesson. Lin Sun was so angry that he ground his teeth. He and Qing Yu stared at each other. After a long time, they couldn't help but laugh. In the end, they laughed so hard that they rocked back and forth. The atmosphere also became cheerful, no longer as subtle and dull as before. Qing Yu felt much more relaxed. Lin Sun also finally understood why Senior Sister Qing Yu was shy before. The truth was revealed, and both of them became at ease. However, many years later, when Jun Huan learned of this matter, he couldn't help but sigh in his heart. His little junior brother was really useless. Senior Sister, can you tell me about what happened in the ancestral court of the Spirit Church all these years? Lin Sun changed the topic. Qing Yu hummed, stroked the short black hair beside her ear, and said softly. Without the subtle and charming atmosphere from before, the two of them conversed rather harmoniously. Unknowingly, time had actually flown by. Later, Lin Sun personally cooked some delicious food, took out a pot of good wine, and drank with Qing Yu. As for the Nine Peaks discourse that was happening in the outside world, Lin Sun didn't care at all. What he didn't expect was that Senior Sister Qing Yu, who seemed to be introverted and gentle, could actually hold her liquor very well. She drank one cup after another, not inferior to men at all. Drinking was a matter of mood for people at their level, so they didn't use cultivation to suppress and dissolve it. Lin Sun noticed that the more Senior Sister Qing Yu drank, the brighter her big eyes became, and the more energetic she became. Her porcelain white skin glowed with a pink luster, making her look charming and cute. On the contrary, he himself was a little tipsy. Senior Sister, I didn't expect you to be so good at drinking, Lin Sun couldn't help but exclaim. The wine he collected were all aged good wine, refined with all kinds of divine materials. If one didn't dissolve it with cultivation, it was extremely easy to get drunk. But Qing Yu was full of energy and fighting spirit. Junior brother, I grew up by eldest senior brother's side. He loves to drink wine the most, so I've been drinking with him since I was young. Master scolded eldest senior brother for raising me into a drunkard, but I feel that drinking wine is the most enjoyable thing for us cultivators. In the end, besides eldest senior brother, no one amongst us could surpass me in the Tao of drinking. Qing Yu held the wine cup, smiled brightly, and said proudly, I remember a long time ago, Martial Uncle Kong Ju liked to drink with me. Every time he saw me, he would compete in drinking with me, but he would always be dead drunk. Lin Sun suddenly felt like he was looking up to a high mountain, and exclaimed, "So senior sister is actually so amazing." Qing Yu chuckled, charming and cute, making it hard for people to imagine that she was a spiritual lord of the ancestral court of the Spirit Church, an immortal-level existence. At this moment, the restriction outside the cave dwelling fluctuated, instantly attracting Lin Sun's attention. He removed the restriction and heard Tao Ling's anxious voice. "Lin Sun, Vice Pavilion Master Xian invites you, quickly come with me." Lin Sun and Qing Yu looked at each other, and the drunkenness on their bodies was instantly swept away. What happened? Walking out of the cave dwelling, Lin Sun saw a trace of anger and anxiety between Tao Ling's brows. Tao Ling quickly told him the reason. It turned out that after 16 hours of competition, the curtains to the Tao discussion of the 9 Peaks had been drawn. Originally, a banquet was supposed to be held, firstly to celebrate the top-ranked core disciples, and secondly to entertain the guests who came from afar. But who would have thought that just after the 9 Peaks discourse ended, a grand wizard from the sorcerer cult named Xing Jun suddenly came to the Tianqi dojo and threatened to spar with Lin Sun. All of a sudden, the whole audience was shocked. The grand wizards of the sorcerer cult were equivalent to the deacons and vice-deacons of the 3 pavilions of the Yuan Church, and their cultivation was between the heavenly longevity realm and the nirvana realm. Xing Jun, who issued the challenge, was a powerful figure who had just advanced to the Grand Wizard. Regardless of his identity, Xing Jun was a guest after all, and when he threatened to spar with Lin Sun, those big shots of the Yuan Church couldn't refuse. But Lin Sun wasn't present at that time. In the face of the challenge, the 3 pavilions of the Yuan Church naturally wouldn't admit defeat. Very soon, a vice-deacon from the Yuan Clear Pavilion stood up and fought on Lin Sun's behalf. This vice-deacon was called Xie Wumian, and he had the cultivation of the great perfection of the heavenly longevity realm, which was a level higher than Xing Jun's cultivation of the late heavenly longevity realm. Moreover, he had rich combat experience. In fact, none of the powerhouses of the Yuan Church were ordinary people, and all of them were monsters and monsters. But as one of the 4 ancestral halls, the powerhouses of the sorcerer cult were naturally not weak, and Xing Jun was an extremely powerful and dazzling figure. At the beginning, Xie Wumian still held back, thinking that his cultivation was a level higher than his opponent's. If he went all out, it would be an unfair victory. Even if he won, it wouldn't be glorious, and it would also damage the reputation of the Yuan Church. But who would have thought that Xie Wumian would encounter danger at the beginning of the battle? Even if he went all out, he was still suppressed to the point that he couldn't even lift his head. In less than 30 breaths, he was heavily injured by Xing Jun, and his Taoist body was shattered with a punch. If it wasn't for a big shot who intervened in time, Xie Wumian would have been completely destroyed. This kind of crushing defeat caused the expressions of everyone in the Yuan Church to turn sour. The most hateful thing was that Xing Jun did not hide his ferocity and disdain while he stood in Heavenly Awakening Dojo. He still insisted on challenging Lin Sun. Everyone in the sorcerer cult disrespected ghosts and gods, did not adhere to etiquette, and did not follow the rules. This point was vividly reflected by Xing Jun. At that time, there were powerful warriors from Spirit Cult, Zen Cult, the 10 Immortal Giants, and other factions near Heavenly Awakening Dojo. There was no way that anyone in the Yuan Church would back down from Xing Jun's provocation. Ruo Yunheng, a vice-deacon from Sky Origin Pavilion, immediately walked out. But he still lost, and his Taoist body was still destroyed by Xing Jun's punch. This caused the great people of the Yuan Church to feel a little embarrassed. The Tao sparring session between the 9 Peaks was supposed to be a grand event for the Yuan Church, but something like this had happened. If the people of the sorcerer cult were allowed to strut around in their own territory, how would the Yuan Church be able to maintain its dignity in the eternal true world? But no matter who it was, they had to admit that Xing Jun's foundation was incredibly terrifying and terrifying. It far surpassed all others, and he could be said to be a heaven-defying character among monsters. Since he dared to jump out and issue a challenge in the Yuan Church's territory, he was destined to not be an ordinary person. Then, Tao Ling hurried to find Lin Sun. After learning this, Lin Sun could not help but raise his eyebrows and said, "There are a total of 72 vice-deacons of the 3 pavilions of the Yuan Church. Can't you choose one who can fight against Xing Jun?" Tao Ling let out a long sigh. "Can't you see that the sorcerer cult came prepared this time? It's very likely that they have already arranged for Xing Jun to provoke them at this time. In other words, Xing Jun is definitely a trump card of the sorcerer cult. Under such circumstances, if you don't show up, Xing Jun will definitely not leave Heavenly Awakening Dojo." Speaking of this, he said with a firm expression, "Our Yuan Church has already lost 2 rounds. We can't lose again. And we can't let Xing Jun continue to be arrogant." Speaking of this, he patted Lin Sun on the shoulder and said, "Lin Sun, this is an excellent opportunity for you. As long as you win, you will definitely be able to unite the hearts of many people in the Yuan Church. This will definitely be of great benefit to you in the future." Lin Sun said, "Aren't you worried that I will lose?" Tao Ling almost rolled his eyes and said, "If you can't win, I will dig my eyeballs out." Lin Sun immediately smiled and turned his head to Qing Yu, who was beside him, and said, "Senior sister, do you want to go and see what this grand sorcerer Xing Jun is capable of?" Qing Yu's voice was gentle and clear. "I'll listen to you. P.S. I'm busy tonight. I will continue to add more tomorrow." Chapter 2855. Tianqi Dojo. The atmosphere was depressing. The descendants of the 9 peaks were all furious. The faces of those important figures were also filled with gloom. On the grandstand, the spirit cult, the Zen school, the 10 immortal magnates, and other forces from all over the world were whispering to each other. Xing Jun stood alone in the Tianqi Dojo, looking arrogant. He was thin and strong. His skin was bronze, and his hair was messy. His eyes were like a pair of golden lamps, surging with frightening flames. Wisps of scarlet immortal principles emanated from his body and interweaved into ancient and barbaric totem symbols. His aura was ferocious and terrifying, as if he was a brutal barbarian god. Why hasn't Lin Sun shown himself? Is he afraid? Xing Jun was getting impatient. He frowned and snorted. Everyone in the witchcraft cult didn't hide their emotions. They didn't respect ghosts or gods, and they didn't follow the rules of etiquette. As a result, the outside world joked that everyone in the witchcraft cult was barbaric. This was the Yuan sect's territory, but Xing Jun was still as arrogant as ever. Xian Feiling, Du Guyong, and the others frowned even more. How could they not know that Xing Jun's challenge must have been ordered by those old guys in the witchcraft cult? But this wasn't a conspiracy. It was an overt plot. He was challenging the Yuan sect in an open and above-board manner, intending to embarrass everyone in the Yuan sect. "Brother Fu, Lin Sun isn't here yet?" Xiong Tu, the priest of the witchcraft cult, said in a thunderous voice from the grandstand. The priest of the witchcraft cult was equivalent to the deputy pavilion master of the Yuan sect. Xiong Tu was as strong as a mountain. He had a rough appearance, and there was a lightning tattoo on his forehead. Fu Wenli said expressionlessly, "Although Lin Sun is the deputy deacon of the Yuankong Pavilion, it's up to him whether he will accept the challenge or not." "Ha ha, so the youngest disciple of the Master of Heart Core is also scared?" Xiong Tu laughed. As a transcendent realm cultivator, he didn't hide his hostility and disdain towards the Master of Heart Core. This was how the witchcraft cult did things. Fu Wenli didn't say anything, as if he was an outsider. Xian Feiling snorted coldly and said, "Old bear, if you're tired of waiting, why don't you spar with me?" Xiong Tu narrowed his eyes and sneered. "Xian Feiling, don't try to provoke me. If I beat you to the ground in your Yuan sect's territory, old man Yen Ji will definitely be furious." Xian Feiling spat, "If you don't dare, then you don't dare. What nonsense are you talking about? Have you forgotten how I chased you all the way to the front of your witchcraft sect in the past? Who was the one who shouted that he would seek revenge on me in the future? But it's been more than 10,000 years, and I've never seen you, old monster bear, dare to come here. If Xian Zhuyin was here, he would definitely notice that his great ancestor was even more arrogant than him. His words stirred the crowd. Some of the older generation's expressions became strange. They thought back to the intense pursuit from a long time ago. At that time, Xiong Tu had indeed been chased by Xian Failing. Xiong Tu's old face became gloomy when Xian Failing exposed his humiliation in front of everyone. His eyes were filled with killing intent. After a long time, he said coldly, "Don't worry, I will return this humiliation 100-fold in the future. Today, I'm here to watch the ceremony. No matter what, I have to save some face for your Yuan sect." In the distance, Xing Jun said coldly, "Lin Sun still hasn't shown up at this time. In my opinion, he's really scared. How disappointing. I'll fight you." Suddenly, a person stood out with a cold expression. Ing Tianhong. He was the head of the Yuanshu Pavilion's deputy deacons and in existence at the peak of the heavenly longevity realm. It was said that he already had the foundation of the Nirvana realm, but he rarely showed up these years. "Senior brother Ing, you must defeat this guy. He's too arrogant." There was a commotion nearby, and many descendants of Yuan's sect cried out. In the Tianqi dojo, Xing Jun said coldly, "I blew up the bodies of the previous two people. Do you want to repeat the same mistake? I advise you not to humiliate yourself." Ing Tianhong's face flashed, and he was about to rush to the dojo. "Tianhong, stand down." Dugu Yong spoke with a dignified expression. Ing Tianhong instantly frowned and said, "If Lin Sun doesn't come, are we going to allow him to run wild in our Yuan sect?" Everyone present had complicated emotions in their hearts. Originally, they were looking forward to Lin Sun showing up and teaching Xing Jun a lesson. But until now, Lin Sun's figure still hadn't appeared, and they couldn't help but feel puzzled. Could it be that Lin Sun really doesn't dare to accept the challenge? He was never like this in the past. The entire Yuan sect actually doesn't have a single person at the same realm as him that dares to accept the challenge. Could it be that the rumors in the outside world are really true? The Yuan sect is declining day by day and isn't as strong as before? Xing Jun sneered. His words infuriated all the great figures of the Yuan sect. This fellow is simply too arrogant. On the distant observation platform, many people watched coldly from the sidelines and wanted to see how the Yuan sect would deal with this provocation. Right at this moment, an apologetic voice resounded, "Sorry, I'm late." The voice wasn't loud, but it resounded clearly in everyone's ears. After that, a tall figure appeared out of thin air and appeared in everyone's field of vision. Lin Sun, Xian Failing, Dugu Yong, Fang Daoping, and the other great figures secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Previously, they were quite dissatisfied in their hearts. Lin Sun still hasn't shown up at this time. Do you really intend to watch a barbarian from the voodoo cult bully everyone in the sect? However, when they saw Lin Sun finally appear, the trace of dissatisfaction in their hearts dissipated. "Lin Sun, it's junior brother Lin Sun. It's Deputy Deacon Lin. Great, he's finally here. My admiration for him for so long hasn't been in vain." The successors of the 9 peaks of the Yuan sect were all excited, and all of them looked excited. Even the elders and attendants of the 3 pavilions felt a sense of relief. It was a wonderful feeling. It was as if everything could be solved as long as Lin Sun came, and they could truly feel at ease and at ease. It's only been less than 2 years, and the prestige that this kid has established in the sect has actually penetrated to such an extent. Noticing this scene, the hearts of Fu Wenli, Qi Xiaoyun, and the other great figures sank. At this time, the reaction of the people in the sect was undoubtedly a great recognition of Lin Sun. This was prestige, an extremely terrible influence. Perhaps nothing could be seen in ordinary times. But when something really important happened, this prestige and influence could be reflected. At this time, some peak heads and elders who had always remained neutral couldn't help but smile at this moment. For example, Yu Wuchou, the head of the first peak, Yu Xiangding, the head of the fifth peak, and Wen Dongmian, the head of the sixth peak, all chose to be neutral and act according to the rules when it came to Lin Sun in the past. But now, they were obviously full of expectations and confidence in Lin Sun. This was undoubtedly the scene that Fu Wenli and Qi Xiaoyun didn't want to see the most. On the distant viewing platform, all eyes were fixed on Lin Sun. Spiritual Lord Qingyun of the ancestral court of the Spirit sect, Buddhist Lord Shi Yi of the Zen sect, Earth Priest Xiong Tu of the Voodoo cult, and the great figures of the 10 immortal forces all showed different expressions. Some had a strange look in their eyes, and they were full of interest. Some had a cold look, and there was a faint, killing intent. Some had a calm look, as if they were watching the fire from the shore. Some were lost in thought. Everyone knew that Xing Jun's appearance was obviously instigated by the great figures of the Voodoo cult to deliberately target Lin Sun. Now that Lin Sun had appeared, the next step would be to see if the successor that the master of the square inch was waiting for was really as powerful as the legend said. "Why did you come so late?" Ying Tianhong was a little angry at Lin Sun's late arrival. Lin Sun cupped his hands apologetically and said, "Don't be angry, senior brother. Leave the rest to me. We can't lose this battle. Otherwise we will lose the face of the Yuan sect." Ying Tianhong looked serious. At the same time, his voice sounded in Lin Sun's ears. "This man has refined his body to an incredible level, comparable to an immortal Taoist soldier. Moreover, he has the talent of golden witch blood, and has mastered the invincible and overbearing magic. You must be careful when fighting against him." After saying that, he turned around and left. Lin Sun smiled knowingly and then looked up at Xing Jun on the Tianqi Taoist field. "What are you waiting for? Come and fight." Xing Jun crooked his finger and shouted in an overbearing manner. Lin Sun was calm and unmoved. Instead, he looked at the viewing platform in the distance and said, "I want to ask who else wants to challenge me. You'd better come out now. Otherwise, I won't accompany you after I defeat Xing Jun." Everyone was stunned. Xing Jun was also stunned. He laughed and said, "Lin Sun, you are as arrogant as the rumor says. I promise I won't beat you up easily. I will have a good time with you." His voice was violent and fierce. Lin Sun ignored him and kept his eyes on the viewing platform. "Is there no one? Well, then I will have a good time with my friend from the witch cult." As he said that, he was about to go to the Tianqi Taoist field. Suddenly, a cold voice resounded. "If you're able to win, then I won't mind giving you some guidance." The crowd was shocked. The person who spoke was from the Jing family of the 10 immortal giant. His name was Jing Qingjia, a very prestigious and peerless figure in the Jing family with the attainment of the heavenly longevity realm. He was wearing a black armor and a scarlet crane cloak. He was handsome and his eyes were bright. His momentum was outstanding. "You won't go back on your words?" Lin Sun asked. Jing Qingjia sneered. "I can't do such a shameful thing in front of so many people. But you'd better not be beaten up by Xing Jun." Lin Sun took out a jade document he had prepared and said, "Come on, put your fingerprint on it. Then I will believe that you won't go back on your word." Everyone present couldn't help but look at the jade document. There was a line of bold and unrestrained characters written on it. "Whoever goes back on his words is the grandson of everyone present." Everyone was stunned. How could this be? Nonsense. Fu Wenli frowned and snorted. "At this critical moment, you still make such a childish thing. Won't our Yuan cult be a laughing stock if it is spread out?" Qi Xiaoyun, Qi Wen and others were also annoyed. Lin Sun was too good at making trouble. But more people were excited. They couldn't help but think of the scene that happened on the day when Lin Sun proved the immortal realm. At that time, he also let Qi Lingzhen, Zhong Liran, Master Fu, and Fu Chaoxing enter the Heaven's Judgment Arena together to fight against 4 people. At that time, everyone thought he was crazy. But it turned out that Lin Sun did this because he didn't want any of his opponents to go back on their words and escape. Chapter 2856. Jing Qingjiao was shocked as well. Under this kind of situation, under the attention of countless great figures, as an undying existence, Lin Sun actually raised such an absurd request. Jing Qingjiao's heart couldn't help but surge with rage because of this. Regret. Lin Sun waved the jade scroll in his hand and said. Jing Qingjia snorted and left the platform. He came to Lin Sun's side and pressed his palm on the scroll. He then stared at Lin Sun and said coldly, I advise you not to lose to Xing Jun. Lin Sun smiled and pointed to the side. You've got some guts. Then stand here and line up. In an instant, many people laughed out loud. Jing Qingjia's face darkened, but he suppressed it. Anyone else? Lin Sun's eyes scanned the platform. Don't blame me for not giving you a chance to challenge if you keep wasting time. His voice resounded. At this time, even the big shots raised their eyebrows. This kid was really arrogant. I'll go. Count me in. Humph. You really think you're invincible? At this time, some figures stood up and couldn't hold it in anymore. Almost all of them came from the 10 Undying Giant. There were 6 or 7 of them. Seeing this scene, some people were secretly shocked and worried for Lin Sun. Because all those who stood out at this moment were ruthless and had abnormal foundations. When they saw a figure standing out from the Diana sect's ancestral court, the atmosphere became silent. This person wore a white monk robe. His appearance was delicate, his eyes were clear, and his body was spotless. He exuded an ethereal aura. Yu Fengzi, the head protector of the Diana sect, a natural-born Buddhist child. He was said to have the 9 orifices Zen heart and was known as the first heaven longevity realm disciple of the Diana sect in the last 10,000 years. Rumor has it that when he was born, 100,000 rays of light fell from the sky and 3,000 golden lotuses appeared on the ground. He was bathed in the sound of Sanskrit and light, looking extremely holy. One could say that Yu Fengzi was extremely famous among the 4 ancestral courts and the 10 Undying Giant. Many old monsters believed that in the future, Yu Fengzi would most likely inherit the present-age Buddha of the Diana sect. The 3 Buddhas were the past Buddha, present Buddha, and future Buddha. It was also a title equivalent to the Yuan sect's pavilion master. In other words, Yu Fengzi was very likely to be the future Buddha. Who wouldn't be shocked when such a famous arhat stood out at this moment to accept the challenge? The hearts of everyone in the Yuan sect sank at this moment. Without a doubt, the appearance of Yu Fengzi made them realize that the matter was definitely not as simple as it seemed. It was extremely likely that the Zen sect had already arranged this. Lin Sun seemed to be completely indifferent towards this, and he waved his hand and said, Come, come, come. All of you press your fingerprints one by one and then line up over there. These words instantly destroyed the oppressive atmosphere in the surroundings, and it caused countless people to be speechless. At a time like this child is actually still so arrogant? Looking at those strong men who stood out, they all looked gloomy. Some of them gritted their teeth secretly, obviously irritated by Lin Sun's provocation. Isn't this nonsense? Fu Wenli was really a little annoyed. Do you think these people won't jump out after Lin Sun defeats Xing Jun? Xian Failing asked. Fu Wenli narrowed her eyes. Everyone knows that Xing Jun is just the first one. Even if he is defeated, there are bound to be others who will jump out to challenge Lin Sun. Xian Failing said indifferently, rather than saying that these guys are here to watch the ceremony, it's better to say that they want to take this opportunity to find out Lin Sun's real strength. After all, there has never been an immortal supreme path in this world. When such power may appear in Lin Sun, I'm afraid those enemies of Taoism will not sit still. Those big shots of the Yuan sect were all silent. Naturally, they had already seen through this. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been so many twists and turns after the end of the discussion. Until those challengers pressed their fingerprints one by one, Lin soon put away the jade silk document and said to himself, including Xing Jun, there are 9 people in total, which is not too few. These words were very casual, but for Xing Jun, Jing Qingjia and other people, it was extremely harsh. Did this guy really think that he had the chance to defeat them one by one? Arrogant. Xing Jun couldn't stand it anymore. He pointed at Lin Sun and said angrily, "Why don't you come up?" Lin Sun nodded. "Then let's start with you." Before his voice died away, his figure had already appeared in the Tianqi Taoist field out of thin air. All of a sudden, all the people present focused their eyes on him. Xing Jun had defeated Xie Wumian and Ruo Yunheng of the Yuan sect one after another, and smashed their Taoist bodies, which made him look extremely fierce. There was no doubt that he was a trump card of the witchcraft cult, and his strength was extremely terrifying. At this time, even the descendants of the 9 Peaks, who were full of confidence in Lin Sun, couldn't help but hold their breath and become slightly nervous. Remember, don't use secret treasures beyond the scope of this realm, don't use the power of order, and don't kill people. Xian Failing reminded in a deep voice in the distance. The atmosphere became more and more solemn and oppressive. Xing Jun's expression was vaguely ferocious. He stared at Lin Sun and said word by word, "Don't worry. As I said just now, I won't beat you up so easily. I promise I'll play with you." Scarlet immortal laws emerged on his bronze-colored skin and interweaved into an ancient totem. His power suddenly rose to the extreme. From a distance, he looked like an ancient barbarian god. This made many descendants of the 9 Peaks' eyes sting and their hearts palpitate. After all, they were Zhu Xie's ancestors. Lin Sun said casually, "But I don't have too much time to accompany you now. Don't you see that there are still many people waiting down there? Let's start." "You are really arrogant." Blue veins appeared on Xing Jun's forehead. He could no longer control his killing intent and rushed out. Swish. His figure was swift and fierce, as if he had turned into a sharp bloody blade, and he slashed at Lin Sun angrily. One punch shook the earth and the sky. That was the physical power released to the extreme. Like a dark cloud pressing down on a city, the nearby void suddenly collapsed, and mysterious ancient shaman totems emerged. It was so fierce that it made people feel desperate. Lin Sun stood still until Xing Jun approached him. Then he suddenly stretched out his hand and slapped Xing Jun's face. It was also extremely simple and violent. Bang! The collision of the fist and the palm was like the collision of the sun and the moon, and a violent turbulence burst out between them. Then, Xing Jun's overbearing punch was shattered. The remaining force of the palm didn't reduce and spread out, and Xing Jun's figure flew backward. The audience was silent. Many people gasped in astonishment. Everyone had seen Xing Jun's overbearing and ferocity. He had beaten Xie Wumian and Ruo Yunheng one by one before. But now, as soon as he punched, he was shaken back. Again. Xing Jun let out a long roar. His bronze skin bulged, and a terrifying scarlet light burst out. He suddenly became much taller. His long hair was loose, and he punched again. There were terrible visions of the sky collapsing, the earth sinking, the sun and the moon sinking, and so on. It gave people the feeling that this punch could chisel a part of the sky and destroy mountains, rivers, and all living things. Compared with before, it was much stronger. Some seniors of the heavenly longevity realm felt a chill in their hearts. They had to admit that although Xing Jun was arrogant, he had the confidence to be arrogant. But facing this punch, Lin Sun just swung out a slap casually and naturally. Boom! On the Tianqi dojo, the roar was like thunder, shaking the universe. The strength of Xing Jun's punch was visibly and fiercely crushed and dispersed, and the sleeve of his right arm exploded inch by inch along with this, causing it to flutter and disperse like a butterfly flying through a flower. When the force of Lin's palm spread out, Xing Jun's figure seemed as if he'd suffered the impact of a raging sea, causing him to be directly blasted flying, and he was only able to stabilize his figure after flying an entire 30 m away. And his face was already alternating between green and white, and his eyes were solemn and doubtful. Outside the field, there was already a great sensation, and there was a lot of boiling voices. "Junior brother Lin, kill him! Fierce, too fierce, this is how it should be. Strong." Everyone in the Yuan sect was very excited. Just 2 blows had made them clearly feel Lin Sun's strength. Previously, Xing Jun's fierceness and ruthlessness had brought great anger to them, and they were all holding back their anger. Now they finally felt exhilarated. Junior brother Xuya is right. It turns out that junior brother is already so strong. In the distance, Qing Yu was also surprised. On the viewing platform, a group of big shots revealed serious expressions as they watched the battle with rapt attention, and they were not as casual and calm as before. Lin Sun's identity was very special, and his cultivation path was also extraordinary. However, they did not know exactly how strong he was, and now they had the opportunity to observe and understand it personally. Clang! In the Tianqi dojo, a black bone spear appeared in Xing Jun's hand. This was the first time he used a treasure since he stood on the Tianqi dojo. Everyone realized that Xing Jun was going to fight with his life. The people of the shaman cult were the least afraid of fighting with their lives. Boom! He stepped on the ground, and his body was like a scarlet lightning that tore the sky apart. In the next moment, the bone spear in his hand burst out, like a spear of death thrown with all his strength by an ancient god of barbarians, and it emitted an unparalleled sharpness. Many exclamations resounded. Even watching from afar, there was a sense of fear as if their minds were being pierced. This blow was too terrifying. The control and application of the immortal law had reached an unimaginable level. Clang! Lin Sun still stood on the spot without moving, and he swung his palm forward. The black bone spear suddenly bent, and it emanated a deafening explosion while the eternal light of the Tao that shot out from it drowned the entire area. Boom! The black bone spear that was bent like a bow finally seemed to be unable to bear the heavy load, and together with Xing Jun, it was forcibly shaken out by the power of this palm. Xing Jun coughed up blood. Everyone's expression changed. The power Xing Jun used was so powerful, but he still could not shake Lin Sun, and was defeated again. Before the crowd could react, Lin Sun, who had been standing where he was, suddenly moved. Swish! Just as Xing Jun stood firm, Lin Sun's figure had already arrived. He suddenly stretched out his hand and grabbed, breaking through Xing Jun's resistance and defense like a hot knife through butter. In the exploding rain of light, Lin Sun clenched his 5 fingers and firmly clamped Xing Jun's wrist. Then, he suddenly swung Xing Jun up and smashed him to the ground. Bang! The Tianqi dojo shook violently. Xing Jun's facial features were badly mutilated, and he saw stars. His body twitched violently because of the sharp pain. All the spectators felt pain just by watching. Too overbearing. P.S. More updates tonight. Do you have monthly votes? You're about to enter the top 20 from the 21st. Do you want to help? Chapter 2857. Xing Jun had been destroyed too quickly. From the beginning of the battle, he attacked with 2 punches, each more powerful than the last. But they were all pushed back by Lin Sun easily. On the 3rd blow, he used the Taoist bone spear without hesitation, but he was still pushed back with the spear. And when Lin Sun counterattacked, it was simply all-powerful, and it broke through Xing Jun's defenses with peerless might, crushed the defenses on Xing Jun's body, and captured Xing Jun in one go. A series of actions happened in the blink of an eye. People couldn't help but have an illusion that even Xing Jun, who went all out, seemed to be too weak in front of Lin Sun. How could it be? Xiong Tu, the priest of the witchcraft, narrowed his eyes. The other big shots on the grandstand couldn't calm down either. Xing Jun was not weak, otherwise, He couldn't have defeated Xie Wumian and Ruo Yunheng. But in front of Lin Sun, his combat power was not enough. They were both in the longevity realm, but how could the gap be so obvious? People couldn't help but think of that rumor. Was there really an immortal path in this world? This place was in an uproar. The Origin Sect's inheritors were all excited, erupting with commotion. Strong. He was really too strong. No wonder he was the most popular person in the Yuan Church. Xian Feiling, De Guyong, and the others looked much more relaxed, and their eyes were full of praise. Lin Sun's appearance and defeat of Xing Jun also helped them vent their anger, and greatly restored the reputation and face of the Yuan Church. Fu Wenli, Qi Xiaoyun, and the others felt very complicated. They should have been happy about this, but because it was Lin Sun who fought, they couldn't be happy. Bang! 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 In the Tianqi dojo, Lin Sun carried Xing Jun like a pile driver. Xing Jun's body was so strong that it was comparable to an immortal Taoist soldier, but it didn't take long for him to be smashed. His flesh was torn and blood was dripping. Many of his bones were broken. The blood that splashed out dyed the ground red, which was shocking. Many people couldn't bear to see it. It was too tragic. The trump card of the witchcraft cult, who was so arrogant and had attracted the attention of the audience, was directly defeated after Lin Sun appeared. Jing Qingjia and the other experts waiting in line changed their expressions at this moment, and they felt a chill in their hearts. They didn't expect Xing Jun to be defeated so quickly. Stop! Xiong Tu's furious voice rang out from the distant viewing platform. Lin Sun said indifferently, "He's not dead yet, and he hasn't admitted defeat himself, which proves that he still has the strength to fight." As he spoke, bang bang bang, another round of random smashing caused Xing Jun's body to be smashed to a horrifying state, and it seemed as if it would fall apart at any moment. Many people outside the arena couldn't help but gasp. Surrender! Xiong Tu was anxious, fearing that Xing Jun would be disabled by Lin. Xing Jun looked extremely stubborn, but it didn't take long for his head to be smashed open, and his spirit was firmly imprisoned by Lin Sun, unable to escape. "I admit defeat." His voice seemed to be squeezed out from between his teeth. "What did you say? I didn't hear you clearly." As Lin Sun spoke, he twisted Xing Jun's arm and tore it off. Blood splattered everywhere. They seemed as if they intended to tear Xing Jun into pieces. "Me. Admit it. Lose." Xing Jun's roar was filled with incomparable anger, humiliation, unwillingness, and hatred, which resounded through the world. As expected, Lin Sun stopped and kicked Xing Jun's smashed body out of the Tianqi dojo. Then, he clapped his hands calmly. There was an uproar in the field, which was extremely sensational. Apart from those who hated Lin Sun, everyone in the Yuan sect, no matter if it was the big shots or the successors, felt delighted and excited. Even Tao Lin couldn't close his mouth. Lin Sun won this battle too beautifully. He suppressed his opponent with a thunderous momentum, which shocked those who came to watch the ceremony. This feeling was too great. This is what people want. Looking at those sects who cheered for Lin Sun, Xian Feiling couldn't help sighing with emotion. Fu Wenli, Qi Xiaoyun, and others looked more and more gloomy. Next, in the Tianqi dojo, Lin Sun looked at Jing Qingjia and said lightly, which immediately quieted the boiling atmosphere in the field, and attracted everyone's attention. Humph! Although Jing Qingjia was bewildered, he had confidence. In a flash, he arrived at the Tianqi dojo. He wore black armor and a scarlet cloak. He was handsome and had an outstanding aura. Swoosh! As soon as he got on the stage, 9 stone steels appeared around him. Every single steel was branded with a diagram of the Zhou dynasty, and they emanated an unshakable aura that was like a mountain. They coiled around his figure like 9 mountains of the Zhou dynasty. 9 light universe suppression steel. It was a group of mysterious and unfathomable immortal Dao soldiers. It was the inherited treasure of the Jing family, and it was rumored that it was refined from the chaos source of 9 worlds. It could suppress the universe and suppress Zhou Su. At the same time, the 9 light universe suppression steel's defensive power could be said to be tyrannical. It surrounded him like 9 worlds, and ordinary opponents couldn't break it at all. There was an uproar outside the field. Obviously, they realized that this was Jing Qingjia's trump card. Clang! In Jing Qingjia's hand, a green spear that looked like it was burning appeared. Circles of flames formed by the immortal law spread out, giving people a feeling that it could burn the world. Flame God Spear. At this moment, Jing Qingjia was like a god of war, mighty and proud. The cultivation and treasures he possessed made some of the older generation envious. Lin Sun, show your Dao soldiers. Jing Qingjia raised the green spear and pointed it at Lin Sun. I don't need it to deal with you, Lin Sun said casually. Humph. Jing Qingjia leaped forward as fast as lightning. He twisted his wrist, and the flame god spear tore through the sky like a line of fire, piercing towards Lin Sun. At the same time, the 9 light universe suppression steel surrounded him, making him seem to move horizontally with 9 world. His power was terrifying. Many people were amazed. In fact, whether it was Xing Jun or Jing Qingjia, they were all heaven-defying figures in the heavenly longevity realm. Their foundation was extremely abnormal. In the outside world, they were almost invincible in the same realm. In a sense, they could already be regarded as the true peak in this realm. But unfortunately, Jing Qingjia met Lin Sun this time. Then, Lin Sun's sleeves fluttered as he strolled like an exiled immortal. His right hand stretched out from his sleeve and clenched into a fist. It was a simple and natural punch, but it caused Jing Qingjia's blazing tyrant divine spear to vibrate and tremble violently. Boom! The 9 light universe suppression steel pressed forward, releasing a terrifying power in an attempt to suppress Lin Sun's attack. It had to be said that this was indeed an extremely powerful set of treasures. It made Lin Sun's figure stagnate, showing signs of being blocked and suppressed. But in the next moment, the sound of Tao rumbled around him. Tens of thousands of Tao rose together and interweaved into an obscure and inexplicable immortal halo, forcefully dispelling the pressure. Jing Qingjia's eyes narrowed, and the flame god's spear swept out. It pointed at the sky and struck the earth, setting off a myriad of flames. The fiery red laws danced and burned the sky red. It was violent and overbearing. Bang! 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 In an instant, the two fought fiercely. It was an unprecedented battle, causing the Tianqi dojo to fall into a violent torrent of destruction. The spectators were dazzled by this scene, and they exclaimed repeatedly with admiration. Those great figures held their breaths in concentration as they observed carefully. They tried to discern more things from the details of the battle so that they could accurately measure Lin Sun's current combat strength. But unfortunately, Jing Qingjia only persisted for a short moment before falling into a passive state of defense. Even though Lin Sun was barehanded, the energy of the great Tao he possessed was peerlessly formidable. He struck out with his fists, slapped out with his palms, slashed out with his fingers, or formed seals to suppress. Every single strike caused the flame god's spear to wail violently, and it shook Jing Qingjia to the point his vital energy and blood roiled. Not to mention counterattacking, if it wasn't for the 9 light universe suppression steel protecting him, he would have probably been unable to resist such a crushing attack since a long time ago. This caused the hearts of many to tremble, and a wave of astonished voices resounded in the surroundings. Even the great figures and disciples of the Yuan sect were shocked by Lin Sun's godlike might. However, needless to say, the 9 light universe suppression steel was extremely inconceivable. It was like 9 worlds that stood before Jing Qingjia, causing him to be practically invincible. Lin Sun, it's already come to this. Are you still not going to use your treasures? Shouted Jing Qingjia. In his opinion, being suppressed by Lin Sun barehanded was a form of humiliation in itself. I told you, you're not qualified. As soon as Lin Sun finished speaking, the imposing aura on his body changed abruptly. He seemed to have transformed into a cauldron of chaos, and his spirit, energy, and essence seemed to be burning as he suddenly struck out with his fist. Bang! Amidst the earth-shattering sound of collision, one of the 9 light universe suppression steels was actually forcefully blasted away, and it shook violently and caused an explosion. The surroundings fell silent as everyone was shocked by this scene. Rise! Jing Qingjia's expression changed abruptly, and he exerted all his strength to control the 9 light universe suppression steel. But Lin Sun didn't give him the chance to struggle anymore. In the next moment, Lin Sun flashed forward and instantly struck out over 1,000 punches. The force of his punches surged out like a tsunami. The 9 steels seemed like 9 worlds that had suffered the impact of a natural disaster, and they showed signs of collapsing, being destroyed, and withering. Rumble! In the end, accompanied by a heart-shaking rumble, the 9 steels were crushed and flew away from Jing Qingjia's figure. All of them shook violently and their light dimmed. Under such an impact, Jing Qingjia immediately coughed up blood, and his face turned ghastly pale. He still wanted to resist, but Lin Sun, who had rushed forward, split open his defensive force with a punch, and his head exploded. His body was destroyed by this punch, and his flesh and blood splattered everywhere. Some big shots almost thought that Lin Sun wanted to kill Jing Qingjia, and they shouted in shock. Stop! How dare you? Don't you dare! It was even to the extent that some old fogies of the Jing clan had already stood up and were about to rush over. In the Tianqi dojo, Lin Sun held Jing Qingjia's spirit in his hand and spoke indifferently. Everyone, calm down. He's not dead yet. The big shots of the Jing clan heaved a sigh of relief, but their expressions were very ugly. Jing Qingjia, who had wielded the 9 light universe suppression steel and the flaming tyrant divine spear, had still been shattered by Lin Sun, who was barehanded. This was too humiliating. Lin Sun's gaze swayed as he looked at the big shots of the Yuan clan, and his eyes were filled with coldness. Previously, when she saw Jing Qingjia being killed, Fu Wenli had stood up immediately and reprimanded him sternly. She seemed to be even more nervous than the big shots of the Jing clan. P.S. Send more updates to me. Chapter 2858. Although Fu Wenli's expression was calm, her heart had sunk. He was keenly aware that many people in Yuan sect, including Lin Sun, were looking at him with anger and disappointment. Obviously, many people were disgusted when he stood up and scolded Lin Sun. Brother Fu, you lost your composure just now. Xian Feiling said coldly. It's already been stipulated that killing is forbidden in this kind of duel. I was warning Lin Sun to prevent him from making a big mistake. I was also thinking about our sect. How could I lose my composure? Fu Wenli said indifferently. Xian Feiling said no more. The reaction of many people in Yuan sect was to retaliate against Fu Wenli's action just now. And Lin Sun was undoubtedly using this battle to unite the hearts of the people in the sect. Don't ask for trouble next time. Lin Sun casually threw Jing Qingjia's spirit away like throwing garbage. I'll remember you. Jing Qingjia left the Tianqi Taoist field gloomily with the blood, flesh, and treasures of his body that had been smashed by Lin Sun. The audience was getting more and more excited. Since Lin Sun appeared, he first defeated Xing Jun and then beat Jing Qingjia. Each battle was stronger and more beautiful than the last. This also won a lot of cheers and support from Yuan sect. Looking at the grandstand again, the expressions of the lords from different forces all turned solemn. The foundation Lin Sun showed in the heavenly longevity realm was completely beyond their expectations and imagination. Next, Lin Sun looked outside the Tianqi dojo. There were still 7 people waiting there. However, all of them looked dignified, without the previous relaxed and disdainful look. The fiasco of Xing Jun and Jing Qingjia undoubtedly had a great impact on them. Zhongying, it's your turn. Someone in the distance reminded him loudly. Zhong Ying was the second person to jump out after Jing Qingjia and put his fingerprint on it. He was tall in a yellow robe, carrying a ferocious blood-colored halberd on his back, and his breath was extremely terrible. He came from the Zhong clan, one of the top 10 immortal giants, and was at the peak of the heavenly longevity realm. Whether it was fame, foundation, or combat power, he was not inferior to Jing Qingjia, or even slightly better. I don't need your reminder. Zhong Ying took a deep breath, suppressed the surprise and fear in his heart, and jumped to the Tianqi battlefield. He had to come. Otherwise, the "whoever admits defeat is the grandson of everyone here" written on the silk paper would be the greatest humiliation of his life. Moreover, he wasn't the only one who'd lost face. The Zhong clan that stood behind him had as well. It was also at this time that he realized Lin Sun's sinister intentions. He used such a piece of paper to make those who accepted the challenge regret even if they wanted to. But after she stood on the square, Zhong Ying calmed down completely, discarded all distracting thoughts, and revealed the bearing and might that a peerless figure should possess. Clang! He took a deep breath, and a faint silver divine ring of immortality appeared behind him. As the divine ring rotated, the scarlet halberd on his back let out a clear cry and fell into his hand. Boom! Eternal light surged on his body and shot into the sky. His yellow robe fluttered, and his might shook the heavens and the earth. Light shadow wheel slash! With an explosive shout, he directly attacked. The scarlet halberd brandished about, drowning heaven and earth in blood. It was as if they had fallen into a bloody purgatory. This was a strange and unfathomable 9th rank heaven rank immortal. The power of law was integrated into Zhong Ying's cultivation and blended with his own bloodline talent. As soon as he attacked, he went all out. With the lessons of Xing Jun and Jing Qingjia, everyone knew that they couldn't underestimate or hold back when fighting against Lin Sun. Lin Sun was still empty-handed. He didn't dodge, but leaped forward. The two immediately fought fiercely. One of them had the image of a great abyss, and the obscure power of law intertwined between his palms and fingers, wantonly conquering. The other held a scarlet halberd, and his movements were bold and unparalleled. At the first time, all the eyes outside the arena were attracted to them. But just a moment later, Zhong Ying was defeated. A peerlessly sharp sword chi slashed down, slicing open his chest and almost cleaving him into two halves. He also went all out and used his talent without reservation, but he was still no match for Lin Sun and was seriously injured on the spot. Unlike Xing Jun and Jing Qingjia, Zhong Ying decisively admitted defeat. Lin Sun stopped immediately. Although you're an enemy, I have to admit that you're very strong. Zhong Ying's eyes were complicated, full of unwillingness and bitterness. He shook his head and turned away. Outside the arena there was silence. Everyone was shocked and speechless. There was a depressing atmosphere on the viewing platform. Lin Sun's strength had been vividly demonstrated in the 3 duels. Under normal circumstances, anyone who wanted to challenge him would have to weigh the consequences. But now, such a battle was destined to continue. Before the battle, Lin Sun had asked those challengers to press their fingerprints on the jade silk document, making it impossible for them to have any other choice. Fight or admit defeat. It was also at this time that everyone finally understood why Lin Sun took out such a jade silk document. He was afraid that those challengers would be terrified. Thinking of this, the adults on the viewing platform were all depressed. If they were defeated like this, the old guys who came to watch the ceremony would lose face and be unable to raise their heads in front of those old guys. But they couldn't stop all this. The key was that there was a jade silk document with fingerprints in Lin Sun's hand. And the sentence on the document was extremely vicious. Whoever reneged would be the grandson of everyone present, who wouldn't dare to brace themselves and accept the challenge. Lin Sun didn't care about this. He was drinking and chatting with senior sister Qingyu, but they were interrupted by such a storm. especially when he heard that the opponent wanted to challenge him. How could he be in a good mood? What's more, all the characters who accepted the challenge this time could be considered enemies of Mount Innerheart. Lin Sun wouldn't let them off just like that. For example, that jade silk document was specially prepared by him. Next, Lin Sun said calmly. Outside the Tianqi Taoist Hall, there were still 6 challengers. Except for Yu Fengzi, the expressions of the other 5 people were very ugly. They were very gloomy and depressed. The reason why they dared to accept the challenge before was that they were not weaker than Xing Jun and Jing Qingjia. However, Xing Jun and Jing Qingjia had been trampled to such a state, causing them to lose their confidence. Don't you dare! Lin Sun took out the jade silk document and shook it. Do you want me to read it in front of everyone? See who the grandson of everyone present is? This was undoubtedly a humiliation. The old people on the viewing platform couldn't help frowning. They all wanted to rush up and teach Lin Sun a lesson. It was so infuriating. Yuan's sect. There was a burst of laughter in the camp. Although no words were said, the mocking laughter made the faces of the challengers even more gloomy. Let me go first. Yu Fengzi sighed softly. He was dressed in a white frock, with delicate features and ethereal aura. He was a natural-born arhat of Zen sect, only seen once in 10,000 years, and ranked as the chief protector of Zen sect. His background was unfathomable. When he stood out, the atmosphere in the field suddenly changed. On the viewing platform, many people secretly breathed a sigh of relief. If Yu Fengzi made a move, he might be able to turn the tide and kill Lin Sun's prestige. The other 5 challengers also breathed a sigh of relief, as if they had just escaped from a desperate situation. For them, if Yu Fengzi could defeat Lin Sun, they wouldn't have to fight on the stage anymore. But Lin Sun said coldly, "What did I say just now? Line up and come one by one. How can the latecomers catch up? Monk, retreat to the back." His words stunned all the people present. "Yes, go back. You are the last one. Don't worry. Yu Fengzi, although you are the #1 figure in Zen sect, you have to follow the rules. Don't forget that you have left your fingerprint on Deputy Deacon Lin's document." Those people of Yuan's sect all clamored to support Lin Sun. All of a sudden, the faces of the 5 challengers turned green, and they even wanted to kill Lin Sun. Even the big shots on the viewing platform looked a little gloomy. Only Xian Feiling and Duguyong were smiling and watching the fun. They were in an indescribable mood, and began to plan in their hearts what kind of reward they should seek for Lin Sun after today's event was over. Lin Sun had won glory for Yuan sect. How could they not give him a good reward? Hey, it's your turn. On the Tianqi Taoist field, Lin Sun looked at the next challenger. It was a man as thin as a hemp stick, wearing a white robe and a black hat. His cheeks were long and narrow, and there was a slender green snake hanging on each of his ears. His name was Mao Qiu, from the Mao family in the 8th heaven region. Being called that by Lin Sun, Mao Qiu's face darkened. Didn't he have a name? This guy was so arrogant. Mao Qiu, come on. Many successors of Yuan's sect booed. Mao Qiu took a few deep breaths and said in a low voice with a cold look, "It's the behavior of a reckless man who knows he can't do it. So, I admit defeat." He was very magnanimous and calm. Obviously, he admitted defeat, but he said it in a righteous and powerful way, which stunned all the people present. Immediately, many people scolded him for being shameless. "Admit defeat?" Lin Sun asked. "Yes, admit defeat." Mao Qiu braced himself and said. Being stared at by Lin Sun, he felt a little diffident. Lin Sun turned over his palm and a jade slip appeared. He said, "This jade slip records the scene of you admitting defeat. I'll keep it as a souvenir." Mao Qiu was stunned at first, and then he pulled a long face and said angrily, "Lin Sun, I have already admitted defeat. How can you humiliate me in this way? You've gone too far. If you admit defeat, you should act like it. If you don't accept it, why not come up and fight me?" Lin Sun said calmly. All the people present looked strange. They didn't expect that Lin Sun could be so cruel that he could publicize the embarrassing scene of Mao Qiu admitting defeat at any time and make Mao Qiu a laughingstock. Mao Qiu gnashed his teeth in anger. If you admit defeat, stay aside. Don't waste my time and others' time. Lin Sun didn't even bother to look at him again. He looked at the next challenger and said, "Hey, it's your turn." Chapter 2859. Mao Qiu left angrily. He was humiliated and ignored by Lin Sun in full view of the public, which made him feel ashamed. The challenger who was stared at by Lin Sun also felt his scalp tighten at this moment, and his expression was stiff. His name is Zhu Tianyu, from the Zhu clan, one of the top 10 immortal giants of the 8th heaven. He has cultivated for thousands of years in this realm, and his foundation is extremely solid. In terms of real combat power, he is even stronger than Jing Qingjia. Lin Sun, do you dare to fight with me in one move? Zhu Tianyu took a deep breath and said in a deep voice. One move. This was extremely difficult, and the most likely outcome was that they were evenly matched. Don't tell me this guy is trying to use this method to get a draw? What a cunning idea. Many voices rang out, guessing Zhu Tianyu's intentions. Many people revealed looks of disdain. One move. If Zhu Tianyu were to defend with all his might, it would be impossible to determine the victor. Unexpectedly, Lin Sun agreed. Sure, he said casually. Zhu Tianyu was overjoyed and his whole body relaxed a lot. He didn't believe that he couldn't even block one move. Okay, you can't go back on your word. With that, Zhu Tianyu rushed to the Tianqi dojo, his eyes fierce, and his whole body full of confidence and disdain. Mao Qiu, who left in shame and indignation, saw this scene, and his heart was filled with regret. Why didn't he think of using this method to seek a decent draw? This Zhu Tianyu was too cunning. Kill! Zhu Tianyu attacked immediately. Offense is the most impeccable defense. His thin figure charged out explosively while dark-colored armor that was sharp like blades surged out from his skin. It was formed from eternal laws at the 9th grade of the heaven rank, and it possessed both defensive and offensive abilities. It was profound and unfathomable. In an instant, his whole body seemed to be covered with a layer of black armor, and his whole body was covered with black mist. Divine armor. It was a peerless magic that integrated his talent, cultivation, and law. In his left hand, he held a round bronze shield engraved with dense immortal patterns, and in his right hand, a long and narrow sword. Yin-Yang Fish Shield. Desolation Breaker. It was a pair of eternal Tao weapons that were capable of both offense and defense. One was a blade while the other was a shield, and they circulated like a cycle of Tai Chi. They were capable of drawing out and dealing with all attacks, and they revealed the miraculous effect of dealing with a huge force with a small amount of force. When attacking, it was like a blade sweeping through the 9 desolate lands, sharp and fierce without end. In an instant, Zhu Tianyu was simply armed to the teeth, and he'd utilized all his trump cards to the limit, causing many great figures outside the battlefield to be shocked. Almost at the same time, Lin Sun moved. Buzz. The abyssal sword cauldron emerged, its quaint and natural body emitting billions of rays of light. Together with Lin Sun's figure, it soared across the sky. Crack! When the sword cauldron and the yin-yang fish shield collided, the latter's surface cracked and exploded with a deafening explosion. This miraculous immortal Tao weapon was as fragile as paper. At the same time, a Taoist sword flew out from the mouth of the cauldron and flashed. Bang! The saber that Zhu Tianyu had slashed out with fury exploded in his hand, turning into fragments that splattered everywhere. The shield and the saber were destroyed almost at the same time. The destructive impact knocked Zhu Tianyu into the air, with blood spurting from his mouth and nose. It was as if he had been hit by an ancient Tyrannosaurus, and all his muscles and bones made an unbearable friction sound. He was so shocked that he instinctively activated the divine armor to an unprecedented level. But Lin Sun's punch had already arrived. This punch was like a mountain falling from the sky, wrapped in the majestic power that could suppress all the heavens. Before Zhu Tianyu could stand firm, he was smashed to the ground by this punch. Bang! The Tianqi dojo shook violently, and the hearts of all the people outside the battlefield trembled. It was painful to watch. In the smoke and dust, Zhu Tianyu's skinny body lay on the ground, twitching violently as if he was having an epileptic seizure. The divine protection armor that covered his skin had been completely destroyed, and his body was cracked and tattered. Blood soaked the ground, and his face was filled with agony as he moaned involuntarily. There was a dead silence in the battlefield. This battle started quickly and ended even more quickly. From Zhu Tianyu's attack, to the abyssal sword cauldron breaking the saber and the shield, to Lin Sun's punch, it all happened in the blink of an eye. That incomparably domineering punch seemed to have smashed into everyone's hearts, causing their expressions to change. Many people couldn't bear to see it. There were also many people who were so shocked that they stood there in a daze. This is called being too smart for one's own good. He forced Lin Sun to fight with an immortal Dao weapon. If he didn't show mercy, I'm afraid this blow would have killed him. Xian Failing commented with a smile. It's terrible. I thought it could be a draw. But now he's still twitching and can't get up. Du Guyong, Fang Daoping, and other big shots of Yuan School all laughed. They also felt very happy. On the viewing platform, the big shots' faces were much more dignified. As for those old fogies of the Zhu family, they only felt that their faces were burning with shame. Lin Sun was suppressed by one move. This was even more shameful, useless, and laughable than the previous defeat of Xing Jun, Jing Qingjia, and Zhong Ying. Fortunately, I'm not so cunning. Mao Qiu, who regretted not choosing to do so before, felt extremely lucky at this moment. He couldn't help it. Zhu Tianyu was beaten so badly that he couldn't bear to see it. All the people of Yuan School burst into laughter, feeling that this scene was really too exciting. Don't twitch. Hurry up and leave to recuperate. Lin Sun put away the sword cauldron and sighed with pity. On the ground, Zhu Tianyu struggled for a long time before he got up and left dejectedly. Next, Lin Sun looked at the next challenger. Since the beginning of the battle, Xing Jun, Jing Qingjia, Zhong Ying, and Zhu Tianyu had been defeated one after another, and Mao Qiu had also admitted defeat. There were only 4 challengers left outside Tianqi Taoist Hall, including Yu Fengzi. However, at this moment, except for Yu Fengzi, the other 3 didn't have much confidence. I admit defeat, a woman said bitterly. She came from the Fu clan of the 8th heaven. When he saw this scene, Fu Wenli's face turned ugly. That woman was a junior of his and was extremely powerful in the heavenly longevity realm. But now, he had admitted defeat in front of everyone. This made Fu Wenli feel that he had lost face. However, he also knew that although it was a bit shameful, this was the wisest choice. I admit defeat. I also admit defeat. 2 more people admitted defeat one after another. All of them looked gloomy, revealing unwillingness and unconcealable shame and anger. Lin Sun didn't make things too difficult for them. He just recorded the scene of them admitting defeat with a jade slip. Witnessing this scene, there was also a commotion outside the arena. All the people of Yuan School naturally felt proud, and their faces were full of relief and joy. The atmosphere on the viewing platform was very depressing and heavy. Whether it was those who were defeated by Lin Sun before or those who admitted defeat at this moment, they all came from the world's top forces, such as the Witch Cult and the 10 Immortal Giant. It could be said that except for the ancestral court of the Spirit Church and some forces of the 7th heaven, these cultivators who came to watch the ceremony were all suppressed by Lin Sun alone. Is this the power of the Immortal Supreme Path? Some old antiques whispered. If the Immortal Supreme Path was a legend, then this legend seemed to have really come true with the successor of Fang Siyuan. Now, he was only at the middle stage of the heavenly longevity realm, but he still had the absolute power to crush those at the peak of the heavenly longevity realm. This was undoubtedly incredible. His Taoist weapon is also very magical. Someone sighed. Lin Sun had finally used the sword cauldron to destroy the yin and yang fish shield and the desolation cleaver in one fell swoop, revealing earth-shattering power. This also attracted the attention of many big figures, and they were all shocked. This kid, heh? I'm afraid he will be plagued with disasters in the future. Someone chuckled. The meaning in his eyes was difficult to understand. This sentence poked the minds of many big figures. Most of these forces who came to watch the ceremony were enemies of Fang Siyuan. This time, they came to test and understand Lin Sun's strength. Now, the combat strength that Lin Sun had shown made waves of killing intent surge in the depths of their hearts. This is still not his limit. Then let's see if the natural Buddha of the Zen ancestral court, Yu Fengzi, can give us a surprise. If Yu Fengzi wins, the so-called immortal supreme path is also nonsense. If he loses, then we really have to treat it as a top priority. As these big figures talked, they all looked at Yu Fengzi, who was the only one left outside the Tianqi Taoist field. At the same time, the eyes of the people in the field gradually gathered on Yu Fengzi. He was dressed in a white monk robe, ethereal and extraordinary. In the previous battle, he had been waiting there with a calm expression, like an ancient well. It's your turn, Lin Sun said casually. He could also see that Yu Fengzi was unusual. At least, the latter's state of mind and aura were not comparable to those before. Yu Fengzi put his palms together and then floated up the stage. Taoism fellow Lin, if I win, can you come with me to the Zen ancestral court? Yu Fengzi said softly, his voice like the morning bell and evening drum. His words attracted the attention of all the people present. Many people in Yuan's sect were unhappy and conflicted. What did this monk mean? Was he trying to steal from Yuan's sect's territory? How dare he? Xian Feiling, Duguyong and others couldn't help frowning. But Lin Sun laughed and said, if you let me be the head of Zen sect, you don't need to win at all. I will agree immediately. Otherwise, don't think too much and fight here honestly. As he said, he glanced at Shi Yi in the distance, intentionally or unintentionally. He suspected that Yu Fengzi made such a request at the behest of the old bald ass. This request is not impossible. Shi Yi smiled slightly. With your foundation and cultivation, if you join our Zen sect, you will have a great chance to take charge of our Zen sect in the future. Everyone was surprised and doubtful. Shi Yi, Lin Sun is the deputy deacon of Yuan's sect. How can he join your Zen sect? Don't mention such ridiculous words again. Fang Daoping snorted coldly. He was a little angry at the moment. Taoism fellow Lin, please calm down. Shi Ye's voice was calm and light. Sure enough, he didn't mention this matter again. I'm sorry. On the Tianqi Taoist field, Yu Fengzi put his palms together solemnly, without sadness or joy. Thanks to Red and Black 02 and other brothers and sisters for their gifts. Cousin Goldfish is getting married tomorrow. He asked me to help, but I will try my best to keep updating normally. Don't worry, when I'm done, Goldfish will continue to update. Chapter 2860. As soon as his voice died away, a wooden fish appeared in Yu Fengzi's palm. It was shaped like a Buddha's head and was slightly purple-green. He knocked it lightly. Dong! The world trembled, and a huge green lotus condensed in the void. A Buddha was born in the lotus. He was bare-chested and was 300 meters tall. He was full of Buddha's light and looked compassionate. The Buddha stepped on the green lotus, pinched a mysterious seal with both hands, and hit Lin Sun across the air. Boom! The void exploded, and the torrent-like immortal law was full of brilliant momentum. It was full of golden light and great power to cleanse the universe. All the people present were attracted by this magical scene. As soon as Yu Fengzi made a move, the power seemed very unusual, far from what Xing Jun, Jing Qingjia, and others could compare with. In the distance, Lin Sun waved his sleeve. A bright and blazing sword formation appeared in the sky with a rumbling sound. The atmosphere was solemn, interweaving with mysterious and unpredictable killing intent. The two collided, and the seal was shattered by the sword formation. But before the end, Yu Fengzi knocked the wooden fish again. Dong! A huge golden lotus condensed, and a golden Buddha appeared in it. The figure of 300 meters tall was like immortal gold, shining brightly. The Buddha held the Buddhist commandment blade and waved it down. The world seemed to be torn apart, and the dazzling blade chi showed the Zen charm of great perfection, great wisdom, and immeasurable. Lin Sun raised his eyebrows, stepped forward, and waved his fist. Boom! The fist and the blade collided, setting off a violent and monstrous torrent of destruction. The blade was smashed by Lin Sun again, but Yu Fengzi seemed to be unaware of it. He stood there solemnly, knocking the wooden fish with his hand, and chanting scriptures year after year. Dong! 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 A red lotus, a silver lotus, a black lotus condensed in the Tianqi Taoist field one after another. Each lotus was a Buddha of 300 meters tall. Some sat cross-legged and lit the green lamp. Some held prayer beads and turned the prayer tube. Some waved the monk's staff and chanted Buddhist scriptures. In the void, there were billions of Buddha's fire pouring down like a long river from the ninth heaven. Countless pages of Buddhist scriptures whistled out, blooming infinite Buddha's light in the void. When the monk's staff was waved, the world was chaotic. The unimaginable scenes caused many people outside the arena to be dumbfounded and suck in a breath of cold air. He had long heard that the Zen sect's Yu Fengzi was a Buddha that only appeared once in 10,000 years. He had an unfathomable foundation of the great Tao. However, when he truly saw him make a move, he realized that he was stronger than he had expected. At a glance, Lin Sun saw the Buddhas standing on the 5 Buddha lotuses, each displaying a terrifying and unpredictable supernatural power, and all of them rushed to kill Lin Sun. That scene was simply despairing. Lin Sun fought among them. Although he constantly smashed all kinds of Buddhist supernatural powers, he couldn't do anything to the 5 Buddhas for a while. This was shocking. The scenes of Lin Sun defeating other opponents were all witnessed by people. How domineering and powerful he was! His victory was like crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. But at this moment it was clearly different. Yu Fengzi is indeed worthy of being a bodhisattva who has the hope of inheriting the position of present-age Buddha. A senior figure sighed with emotion. It is indeed very powerful. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I would have thought that the rumors were exaggerated. This battle is interesting, but I'm afraid it won't be that easy to defeat Lin Sun. Hearing the comments of those big shots, Buddhist Supreme Shi Yi smiled slightly and said in a warm voice, "This is just the beginning. Yu Fengzi still has many magical skills that he hasn't used yet. Everyone, please wait and see." Those words made the hearts of the adults tremble. Over the years, the Zen sect has been low-key and dormant. There is very little news about them. I never thought that they would cultivate such a powerful figure. Xian Failing frowned. He also saw the strength of Yu Fengzi. These monks are best at hiding their strength. It's not surprising. Fang Daoping said casually. I'm afraid it will be a little difficult for Lin Sun to win this time. Du Guyong sighed softly. With their cultivation and eyesight, they could naturally see that this battle was completely different from the previous ones. Yu Fengzi was also different from other opponents. If Xing Jun was a trump card of the ancestral court of the witchcraft sect, Yu Fengzi was a trump card that the Zen sect had hidden for a long time. At this moment, everyone in the Yuan sect was also holding their breath. The style that Yu Fengzi showed was so dazzling that it made them nervous for Lin Sun. Boom! In the Tianqi dojo, the turbulence splashed, the Buddha's light spread, and all kinds of magical techniques descended, as if covering the sky and earth, attacking Lin Sun heavily. At this time, Lin Sun finally felt the pressure. This made him raise his eyebrows, a little surprised, but immediately, his heart surged with fighting spirit. Not long ago, his cultivation broke through in the cloud guardian house of the seventh heaven, Cold Moon City, and reached the middle stage of the heavenly longevity realm. It was also because of this that when dealing with Xing Jun and the others, he didn't feel any threat at all. From the beginning to the end, he crushed them. But Yu Fengzi was different. Fighting against him made Lin soon feel the pressure that he hadn't felt for a long time. This undoubtedly proved that his attainments in the immortal path could be said to be unprecedented and extraordinary. Not bad, I didn't expect to meet an opponent like you. Today's battle was not in vain, Lin Sun said with a trace of emotion. With his current cultivation, it was really not easy to meet such an opponent. Humph, boasting shamelessly. Some big shots who hated Lin Sun couldn't help but snort coldly. Taoism fellow Lin didn't use the immortal Dao weapon, obviously holding back. In the distance, Yu Fengzi's expression was as calm as ever. Lin Sun sneered. Your current means are still not enough. When I force you to use your ability, it won't be too late to consider whether to use the treasure or not. As he spoke, his figure suddenly stretched out, bent his fingers into a palm, and slashed out a deep sword qi, sweeping in all directions. The 10,000 abyss sword swallowed all directions. Boom! The nearest golden lotus was directly torn apart by the terrifying devouring and obliterating power, and the Buddha standing on the lotus with the Buddhist commandment blade in his hand also collapsed, turning into golden light that scattered all over the sky. Immediately afterward, the red lotus, black lotus, cyan lotus, and silver lotus all suffered the impact of this terrifying sword qi, and the Buddha figures exploded one by one. Looking from a distance, it was like a violent wind passing through, tearing countless petals. This, so strong. The power of the great abyss devouring sky. There was a burst of exclamation from the audience. Lin Sun's attack was like a whirlwind, crushing all directions, extremely tyrannical. Look, it's really not enough. In the Tianqi dojo, Lin Sun said casually. Yu Fengzi smiled, put away the wooden fish, and said, My means have made you laugh. I have been practicing meditation for more than 3,600 years, listening to the Sanskrit sounds of all heavens, quietly comprehending the Dharma of ancient and modern times, and finally gained some insights on the immortal path. It's just that no one has seen it yet. In a voice as calm as water, he put his palms together and bowed slightly. Then, the aura of his whole person suddenly changed. He was thin. His thin figure seemed to be burning, reflecting boundless light. In that light, the Buddhist kingdom of all heavens and the Buddhas of all ages appeared. In the end, these visions all converged into a ray of light, appearing in his hands, like the hands of God, encompassing all the visions of all heavens and all ages. The lords outside the audience were shocked by this scene, and their faces were solemn. Only Buddha Supreme Sure Yi showed a gratified expression. This method is called boundless, taking the meaning of the boundless sea of bitterness, turning back to the shore, and integrating my cultivation, talent, and wisdom. Now, please have a look. As Yu Fengzi spoke, he stretched out his right hand, as if he was picking a flower. Then, he casually threw out his palm. In the void, the sound of Zen resounded through the 9 heavens and 10 earths, shocking the heavens. The sound alone shook the blood of many people outside the audience, and their minds were shaken. Their expressions changed immediately. Then, the Buddha's light shone brightly, connecting the sky and the earth. It was a palm print that covered the sky, and countless Buddhist kingdoms and countless devout Buddhas appeared in the palm. It was like a palm that gave birth to the Buddha world. With this blow, the Tianqi dojo roared and shook violently, and waves of restriction power fluctuated. But Lin Sun's eyes lit up. Instead of retreating, he punched out. It was still a simple and ordinary punch, yet the might contained within it was completely different. It had become even more condensed and terrifying than before, and it carried a unique aura. It seemed as if no matter if one was a god or Buddha, the god or Buddha would be annihilated in the end under this punch. Boom! When the fist and the palm collided, everyone only felt a tingling pain in their eardrums, and their minds shook fiercely. Then, there was a stinging pain in front of their eyes, because the splashing and sweeping divine light on the Tianqi dojo was too dazzling. It was like two suns colliding and then exploding. Only those big shots clearly saw that Yu Fengzi's palm print, which could be said to be world-shaking, was actually resisted and resolved by Lin Sun's fist. They couldn't help but be moved. Confrontation. Yu Fengzi pinched the seal, and his robe fluttered, making him more sacred and ethereal. A strange palm print was condensed, shaped like a lion or tiger, but flowing with the luster of wisdom and perfection. As soon as it appeared, the roar of 800 arhats faintly resounded in the palm print and enveloped it. But Lin Sun sighed softly. It seems that if I don't force you, you probably won't show all your trump cards. His tall figure stepped forward, and his power rose steadily. In a trance, he seemed to turn into a great abyss moving horizontally, and also like a great furnace to suppress the past, present, and future. Boom! With a punch, the palm print shaped like a lion or tiger burst into pieces. In the splashing rain of light, Lin Sun's figure rushed out violently, and his momentum was like a thunderbolt, extremely oppressive. Yu Fengzi's eyes narrowed slightly, and his hands kept forming palm prints. Sometimes it was like a treasure bottle, sometimes it was like a wheel, sometimes it was like a lotus throne, sometimes it was like a jade pot in the Tianqi Taoist field. The sound of Sanskrit was chanting, and the light of Buddha was surging. Thousands of palm prints were superimposed, and their shadows were indistinct, smashing towards Lin Sun overwhelmingly. Lin Sun's counterattack was very simple. He waved his fist and killed with irresistible force. Bang, bang, bang! The palm prints exploded in front of him, like densely lit firecrackers, and countless light rain swept away like a torrent. And Lin Sun's figure was constantly approaching. That powerful and overbearing posture simply made the whole audience boil. Countless exclamations sounded, as if they couldn't believe it. How powerful was Yu Fengzi? But he still couldn't stop Lin Sun's approach. This was too unexpected. Seeing that Lin Sun's figure had already appeared 30 feet away, Yu Fengzi didn't panic. Instead, there was a trace of an incomprehensible smile on his lips. Lotus gives birth to wheel, Brahma heart becomes a realm. A solemn and calm chanting came out of Yu Fengzi's mouth. End of this chapter. Chapter 2861. A distance of 10 meters. It was an extremely close distance. However, as Yu Fengzi chanted the scriptures, a lotus bloomed in this area. At first, it was as small as a fist, but as the petals bloomed one by one, in an instant, it was as if it had turned into a vast world. There were 49 petals, and they were round and translucent, revealing a variety of colors. Looking down from the sky, this lotus looked extremely like a round divine wheel. Lotus reincarnation. As soon as it appeared, the lotus rotated slowly, and an obscure and miraculous force enshrouded the heart of the lotus. Lin Sun sensed danger at the first possible moment. But before he could dodge, his body was covered by a miraculous and obscure force, and his vision blurred. In that instant, it was as if he'd fallen into the cycle of reincarnation. In the darkness, 49 tightly closed doors were lined up in a row. Brother Lin, this is the Brahma Heart Lotus world. It's condensed from my natural talent, the 9 orifices Zen heart, and my cultivation and laws. There are 49 lotus doors within it, and behind each door is a world of reincarnation. Yu Fengzi's tranquil voice resounded in the darkness. This is my trump card. I use the number 49 to deduce my cultivation, and I think that I'm superior to most people in the same realm on the path to the eternal Tao. However, perhaps it's fated by the heavens. Only when I found out about your existence did I notice that our paths towards the Tao are actually similar. There are 50 grand daos and 49 heavenly evolutions. One has escaped. You're the 50th inheritor of the core world, and you're regarded as the lotus that the master of the core world is waiting for. You're just like the one that escaped. Moreover, I'm the one of my own grand dao's 49 heavenly evolutions. Don't you think it's very interesting? This is precisely the reason why I came to the Yuan sect this time. I want to compete with Brother Lin on the path to the Tao. If the path to the eternal Tao really has a supreme, then it's bound to only have one. As Yu Fengzi finished speaking, he carried a form of firmness that came from his bones. The struggle for the Grand Tao was only for the supreme. Is that so? But I'm different from you. I don't believe in the escaped one. Ever since I started cultivating, my master, the master of the square inch, has never given me any guidance. If I'm the inheritor that he's been waiting for all these years, then I'll have to fight for it with my own great Tao. It has nothing to do with whether or not I'm the escaped one. Lin Sun said indifferently, whether it's a coincidence or fate, you're destined to be different from me, and I'm also destined to be different from you. But your last sentence is right. If there's an immortal supreme path in the world, it's destined to be the only one. Yu Fengzi was silent for a moment, then said, "Then let's fight for a higher or lower right now." Lin Sun smiled and added, "You said you have cultivated for more than 3,600 years, but I have cultivated for less than 200 years. Yu Fengzi was silent for a while. He didn't know whether it was because of the blow or because of Lin Sun's words that he had some other ideas. In short, he was silent. Lin Sun ignored him and pushed open the nearest lotus door. He had already seen that these 49 lotus doors were like the 49 roots of the Brahma heart lotus world. Only by destroying them could he escape from this place. His vision blurred and a gray world appeared. This is Daily Sky, one of the 6 skies of the Desire Realm. Created it with my Tao, and there are 80 million Rakshasas inside. If you get lost in it, your cultivation will be reduced by 1 realm. Yu Fengzi's voice sounded again. Apart from this, the other 48 worlds all contain great mysteries. As long as you're trapped, your cultivation will be reduced. I can see that you're very confident in your trump card, but now, I'm not in the mood to talk to you. As Lin Sun spoke, he punched the sky. Boom! In this gray, daily sky, the world shook, and Yu Fengzi's voice suddenly stopped. But soon, countless Rakshasas appeared, densely packed, and like a tide, they flooded this world. This dusky sky dome was illuminated, the radiance endless. 80 million Rakshasas. That number was simply despairing. What was even more chilling was that the appearance of those Rakshasas turned into men, women, old and young, and all kinds of figures. When Lin Sun looked over, his pupils couldn't help shrinking. Because those Rakshasas had turned into the people he was most familiar with. There were enemies, friends, and strangers, the prisoners in the mine prison, the villagers and children in Feiyun village, the enemies and friends he met along the way in Xiao Empire. Ancient Desolation, Starry Ancient Path, Dark World, True Dragon World, Immortal Phoenix World, Kunlun Ruins, Ultimate Ruins, Kiliakazam Battlefield. In the past years, the places he had traveled and the people he met were all transformed by those Rakshasas. Even Zhao Jingxian, Lu Boya, Luo Qingxuan, and others could be seen one by one. At this time, they all turned into an overwhelming torrent and rushed towards Lin Sun. This scene was undoubtedly too shocking and terrifying. What I see in my heart is reflected in my heart. If the heart is disturbed, there will be a killing tribulation. This wonderful method is really extraordinary. Lin Sun let out a sigh of admiration, and he didn't hesitate to praise Yu Fengzi. Immediately, his eyes were as calm as an ancient well, and he rushed up. Boom! His body turned into a big abyss, moving across the world and sweeping forward. Wherever he passed, the dense figures of Azura were crushed and turned into colorful Buddha light. If it were others, seeing countless familiar people rushing toward them, they would probably have a turbulence in their state of mind, and have a lot of thoughts. It was like meeting a loved one, a close relative, or someone they hated the most. It was the easiest to evoke the ups and downs in one's state of mind. As long as there was even a slight flaw in one's state of mind, dark benefit heaven would turn into the most terrible purgatory and kill the people trapped in it. Unfortunately, these were useless to Lin Sun. Since he had seen through the mystery, he would not be fooled. In his eyes, all the familiar faces were fake. Boom! He charged forward, and wherever he passed, countless figures dissipated, turning into Buddhist light that scattered everywhere. In just a few blinks of an eye, the world began to wither and shatter. Finally, with a roar, it completely collapsed in front of Lin Sun. It was still the dark world, but there were only 48 closed lotus doors left. "I hope you don't disappoint me," Lin Sun muttered to himself. As he spoke, he'd already pushed open the second lotus door in a casual and natural manner, as if he was taking an idle stroll in a courtyard, and he was fearless and unrestrained. In merely a short moment, the second lotus door dissipated like a bubble, and Lin Sun's figure appeared. He didn't delay and entered the third lotus door. On the other hand, traces of seriousness gradually appeared on Yu Fengzi's handsome face that was tranquil like an ancient well that was tranquil, and tranquil was gradually suffused with traces of seriousness. From the outside world, on the heavenly enlightenment grounds, a multicolored and perfectly round lotus bloomed, and it was rotating slowly while emanating an obscure and mysterious Buddha light. On the other hand, Lin Sun's figure vanished from the center of the lotus. Yu Fengzi stood at the side of the lotus. Everyone outside the arena was surprised and bewildered, and most of them were unable to see through the profundities within. In the eyes of those great figures, this seemingly calm scene was actually even more dangerous and terrifying than the battle from before. This was a competition between the various grand daos. This is the Brahma Heart Lotus realm, and there are 49 worlds within it that can sever one's cultivation realm. On the viewing platform, Buddhist Supreme Sure Yi wore a smile on his face as he explained the secrets and profundities of the Brahma Heart Lotus realm to the people around him, and those great figures couldn't help but gasp in shock. Such a divine ability was simply unimaginable. Doesn't this mean that Lin Sun, who's trapped within, is very likely to have his cultivation realm severed, and his cultivation will suffer irreparable damage? Someone couldn't help but ask. This sentence attracted everyone's attention. Even the hearts of Xian Failing, Duguyong, and other great figures nearby tightened. Yes. Sure Yi nodded with a compassionate expression. I only hope that Lin Sun realizes his error, repents, and admits defeat as soon as possible. Otherwise, it's very likely that his cultivation realm will be severed. The faces of Xian Failing and the others darkened. Looking at those great figures who had enmity with Lin Sun, their eyes flickered, and there was a faint excitement and expectation between their brows. Fu Wenli, Qi Xiaoyun, and the others were pleasantly surprised. If Lin Sun's cultivation realm was severed, how could he talk about the immortal supreme path? What threat could there be? Sever realm? How could there be such a divine ability in this world? Oh no, Deputy Deacon Lin is in danger. When everyone in the Yuan sect learned of the horror of the Brahma Heart Lotus domain, their expressions changed, and their hearts were in their throat. It was indeed too terrifying. Killing was forbidden in the Tianqi dojo, but there was no rule that forbade things like severing one's cultivation realm. Once Lin Sun suffered this disaster and his cultivation realm fell, all his achievements and prestige were destined to plummet. Thinking of this, many people looked at Yu Fengzi with anger, and their teeth itched with hatred. However, to everyone's surprise, at this moment, Yu Fengzi's expression became more and more solemn. Crack! An explosion suddenly came from the colorful lotus. One of the 49 petals suddenly shattered at this moment. One was missing. This, Sure Yi, who had a compassionate expression, narrowed his eyes. Almost at the same time, everyone present felt that something was wrong. Crack! Before they could figure it out, another petal exploded and collapsed into a rain of light. Yu Fengzi's expression became more and more solemn. Could it be that Lin Sun is trying to break free? Someone murmured. This sentence made the faces of many big shots on the viewing platform become gloomy. The original excitement and expectation in their hearts were replaced by an indescribable tension. They didn't want to see Lin Sun break free. Fu Wenli, Qi Xiaoyun, and others naturally felt the same. But what happened didn't change their minds. In the following time, on the Tianqi dojo, the petals of the lotus continued to burst, making crackling sounds. It was like a slap on the faces of those big shots who hated Lin Sun, making their expressions become gloomy and ugly. Looking at Yu Fengzi, his snow-white frock was fluttering, his lips were pursed, and his delicate face could no longer remain calm. There was a flash of light. Seeing the petals wither and burst, his hands in his sleeves were clenched tightly, and the veins on the back of his hands were bulging. He was trying his best to control the turbulence in his heart. The Brahma Heart Lotus domain was the most powerful talent he had in his life, and it was also the embodiment of the supreme mystery he had explored on the immortal path. This divine ability had once caused many seniors of the Zen sect to exclaim with admiration and shock. Before hearing about Lin Sun's deeds, Yu Fengzi never had any desire to win, nor was he willing to compete with people of the same realm. Not because he was arrogant, but because he stood too high. But at this moment the great Tao that he was most proud of, the great Tao that he was most confident in, was showing signs of defeat. To Yu Fengzi, this was no less than an incomparably heavy blow. When he saw that the colorful lotus flower was riddled with holes, when he saw that only a few petals were left, gradually dimming. Yu Feng seemed as if he'd seen his grand Tao become riddled with holes at this moment and become dim and lusterless, and a strand of indescribable rage and frustration arose in his heart. How could this be? Why was this happening? I used my Tao to evolve into the 4-9 realms, and as one, why couldn't I defeat the successor of Feng Xiyuan? But when the last petal withered and shattered in his field of vision, Yu Fengzi could no longer control himself and coughed out a mouthful of blood. His delicate and pretty face was already completely pale, and his eyes were filled with disappointment, unwillingness, and disappointment. At the same time, bang! The bare lotus core exploded into pieces, and then a tall, mighty, and dazzling figure charged out and appeared in the fields of vision of everyone present here. Everyone was shocked by this. Chapter 2862. A dazzling rain of light was falling. Lin Sun's figure stood in the void like an immortal. Everyone's eyes were filled with shock. Yu Fengzi, the most unfathomable existence of the Zen sect, the Brahma Heart Lotus realm formed by the fusion of talent, cultivation, and law, had been broken. This was too much of a shock to everyone. Those big shots who had been excitedly looking forward to Lin Sun's cultivation being broken only felt suffocated, and their old faces were filled with gloom. Everyone in the Yuan sect was completely excited. No matter how powerful the Brahma Heart Lotus realm was, it had been broken by Lin Sun in the end. Xian Feiling, Du Guyong, Fang Daoping, and the other big shots all breathed a sigh of relief at the same time. Then, they looked at each other and couldn't help but smile. Lin Sun's performance had also amazed them. Admit defeat? On the Tianqi dojo, Lin Sun looked at Yu Fengzi. Previously, when he was trapped in the Brahma Heart Lotus realm and experienced 49 battles, Lin Sun also understood Yu Fengzi's true attainments in the Great Way. Even he had to admit that Yu Fengzi was an extremely powerful opponent, much stronger than characters like Xing Jun and Jing Qingjia. Unfortunately, Yu Fengzi met him. The greatest danger of the Brahma Heart Lotus realm was actually related to one's state of mind, and what Lin Sun was least afraid of was a contest of state of mind. Yu Fengzi was silent for a moment, then suddenly raised his eyes and let out a long sigh. I understand now. The number of the Great Way is not determined by the heavens. In the past, I boasted that I had deduced the extreme of all the ancient and modern methods and comprehended the secret of escaping. I thought that was the supreme way, but now it seems that the path of the immortal supreme has never been like this. Indefinite number, impermanent method, infinite realm, as he murmured with emotion, the confusion, unwillingness, and sadness in Yu Fengzi's eyes all disappeared. His eyes were clear and calm, and a mysterious aura emerged from his body, as if he had broken some kind of shackles. His entire body glowed with a kind of extremely transcendent charm. Shi Ye's eyes lit up, and he clapped his hands in admiration, enlightened and unrestrained. Wonderful! He seems to have broken through the mystique in his heart at this moment. The people on the viewing platform and the elders of the Origin sect were all shocked. They sensed the change in Yu Fengzi's aura. This moved them. What a terrifying perception! He was defeated by Lin Sun on the strongest Tao, but it didn't cause any problems in his state of mind. Instead, he had an epiphany through this battle. Who wouldn't be shocked? When they looked at Yu Fengzi again, everyone's expressions were filled with amazement. He was indeed worthy of being the chief protector of the Zen sect. Lin Sun raised his eyebrows and said, "Interesting." Yu Fengzi clasped his palms together, a tranquil smile appearing on his lips. He was like a smiling Buddha who had achieved enlightenment. He said, "I still have to thank Brother Lin for helping me break through my limits and comprehend the true secrets of a supreme being." Lin Sun laughed. "How are you going to thank me?" "Naturally, we should continue this battle to determine who is stronger." Yu Fengzi's expression was calm. The audience was silent. Many people from the Origin sect were a bit angry. This fellow really didn't know what was good for him. He had clearly lost, and he even gained enlightenment from his defeat. If he really wanted to thank him, then he should have just left. But he still wanted to compete. Did he think that the power after the epiphany could suppress Lin Sun? As for Shi Yi and the other big shots on the viewing platform, they couldn't help but be excited. Even they didn't expect that there would be a turning point. Xian Feiling, Du Guyong, and Fang Daoping couldn't help but frown. This Yu Fengzi was really difficult to deal with. However, Lin Sun restrained the smile on his face and said, "Before, your Brahma Heart Lotus had the ability to cut off one's cultivation. Although it was incomparably magical, it couldn't do anything to me. Now, what do you have to fight with me?" "Of course, it's still the Brahma Heart Lotus," Yu Fengzi said softly. "However, it's completely different from before. I hope you can be careful. If you can't hold on, please admit defeat as soon as possible." At this time, Yu Fengzi seemed to be extremely confident. The epiphany seemed to have made him a different person. Everyone in the Origin sect felt very uncomfortable. Shi Yi and other big shots were not stingy with their appreciation. For them, this was a pleasant surprise. However, Lin Sun said calmly, stubborn and indecisive, "Yu Fengzi, this epiphany may be a great disaster for you. I can give you another chance. It's not too late to admit defeat now." Humph! Hearing this, many big shots snorted coldly. They thought that Lin Sun was very likely to be guilty and deliberately made alarmist remarks, which seemed very ridiculous. In particular, Shi Yi couldn't help but smile and shake his head. Although he didn't say anything, his indifferent attitude made everyone realize that he was very disdainful of Lin Sun's words. Yu Fengzi didn't refute and said calmly, "Taoism Peer Lin, please enlighten me." Buzz. He put his palms together, and a magnificent and colorful lotus in the shape of a round wheel condensed again. An obscure and mysterious aura filled the air. Brahma Heart Lotus Realm. Compared to before, there was now a kind of pure and immaculate great perfection charm. Do you think this small Brahma Heart Lotus Realm can still trap me? Well, I'll let you see my means. A cold luster emerged in the depths of Lin Sun's deep black eyes. He stretched out his hand and put his fingers together. wisps of magnificent and illusory space-time light quietly condensed at his fingertips, turning into a crystal-clear, sharp light. It flickered gently in the void. Swish! A wisp of sharp blades swept across the sky. Time and space seemed to be cut, sweeping away violently. Everything showed a kind of rapid decline and collapse. Everyone felt a stabbing pain in front of their eyes. Even those big shots were no exception. It seemed that only a moment had passed, but it also seemed that countless years had passed. The rules of time distributed between heaven and earth were completely disordered. When all these strange and abnormal changes disappeared. In the Tianqi Taoist field, Lin Sun stood where he was. The magnificent and colorful lotus bloomed, while Yu Fengzi, opposite to him, still maintained the posture of putting his palms together. It seemed that everything that happened just now was an illusion. Many people outside the field were confused. What on earth happened just now? Even the big shots at the Immortal Realm and the Nirvana God Realm looked surprised and doubtful. They vaguely guessed something. And Shi Yi, the Zen sect's Buddha, Xiong Tu, the priest of the witchcraft sect, Qin Yun, the spirit sect, and the old fogies of the Yuan sect all seemed to be shocked at this moment. Their expressions changed, and they couldn't calm down at all. In the dead silence, Lin Sun said indifferently, "As I said, this is a great disaster for you." As soon as his light voice fell, bang! Under the gazes of countless people, the multicolored lotus instantly withered, and then it exploded with a bang and transformed into ashes that drifted into the air. If one were to say that this scene shocked everyone, then what happened next made them tremble in fear and trepidation. Yu Fengzi, who was wearing a snow-white monk robe and standing there with his palms together, suddenly changed his appearance, as if he had suddenly become countless years younger. He turned into a thin and short boy with childish features. His monk robe that originally fitted him seemed to be loose. The most frightening thing was that his cultivation seemed to have been cut off. All of a sudden, he fell from the immortal realm of the heavenly longevity realm to the emperor realm, and then from the emperor realm to the quasi-emperor realm, the sage realm, the longevity calamity realm. Only when he reached the sea-spirit realm of the lower 5 realms did he manage to stabilize his cultivation. Outside the field, there was a dead silence. Everyone was shocked by this scene. Many people's hair stood on end and their eyes widened. This strange change was like the most terrifying thing in the world, and it made everyone feel as if they had fallen into an ice cave. Time. Blade of Time. Supreme Buddha Shi Yi stood up, his expression dark and gloomy. His voice seemed to be squeezed out of his chest, revealing uncontrollable anger. Reverse the flow of time, depriving cultivation, the most powerful innate magical ability of the Lord of Tongtian. Damn it! This forbidden magical ability has appeared again. Looking at the shaman cult and the 10 immortal giants, their faces were covered with frost, and their eyes were filled with anger, as well as a trace of imperceptible fear. Old people like them naturally knew that the reason why Luo Tongtian dared to challenge the 10 immortal giants in the past was that the innate magical ability he mastered was too taboo. And now, after countless years, this innate magical ability had once again appeared in the world, and it was displayed by Lin Sun, the successor of Feng Siyuan. How could they not be shocked and angry? At this moment, Fu Wenli, Qi Xiaoyun, Qi Wen, and other big shots who hated Lin Sun felt their hearts churning with anger and hatred. A long time ago, Luo Tongtian used the Blade of Time to seriously injure many big shots in the 8th heaven and deprive them of their cultivation, causing many voices of panic in the 8th heaven. How could they forget it? But they didn't expect that Lin Sun had awakened and inherited this forbidden magical ability. Before, it was Lin Sun's Blade of Time that reversed the age and cultivation of Yu Fengzi to the time when he was a teenager. Only his memory and wisdom remained unchanged. However, this scene was horrifying enough to make one tremble in fear. Imagine that the most dazzling immortal of Zen sect, a natural arhat who was qualified to inherit the position of present Buddha, lost all his cultivation in the blink of an eye and returned to the time when he was a teenager who had just embarked on the road of cultivation. What a terrible scene it was! Xian Feiling, Du Guyong, Fang Daoping, and others were all shocked, and then their faces changed slightly. They realized that Lin Sun's attack was equivalent to completely destroying Yu Fengzi. The loss of a natural arhat like Yu Fengzi was a great blow to Zen sect. It was absolutely immeasurable, and it was very likely that they would take revenge on Lin Sun at all costs. Xian Feiling and others looked at each other and began to be vigilant, especially paying attention to the movements of Shi Yi and other figures of Zen sect. Looking at other places, the big shots and descendants of Yuan sect finally understood what the great disaster in Lin Sun's mouth was at this moment. They couldn't help but be shocked and speechless. Previously, Yu Fengzi attacked with the Brahma Heart Lotus realm and wanted to cut down Lin Sun's cultivation. But now, Lin Sun cut down Yu Fengzi's cultivation to the Saint realm and beat him back to the time when he was a teenager. For Yu Fengzi, if this wasn't a calamity, then what was? On the Tianqi Taoist field, Yu Fengzi, who had become a teenager, kept his hands together, as if he had been hit unconscious and didn't move for a long time. After a long time, he raised his head and looked at Lin Sun. His lips moved as if he wanted to say something. But in the end, he coughed up a mouthful of scarlet blood. All of a sudden, his whole face turned ashen, and he staggered and fell to the ground, as if he had lost his parents. Chapter 2863. Yu Fengzi's bleak and miserable appearance caused the hearts of everyone present to churn endlessly. Undoubtedly, it was a great blow to him after his cultivation was cut off. He brought this upon himself. Who can he blame? Someone in the Yuan sect's camp snorted. Previously, after using the Brahma Heart Lotus world, Yu Fengzi had already lost in the struggle for the Great Tao, but he still insisted on continuing to fight. The reason was that he had an epiphany at that time and was confident that he could win. But so what if he was enlightened? His cultivation was still cut off by Lin Sun. Yes, if Deputy Deacon Lin had used the Blade of Time earlier, how could he have had an epiphany? Deputy Deacon Lin had shown mercy and reminded him not to be stubborn, but he didn't listen and ended up like this. He deserved it. Many descendants of the Yuan sect echoed. They couldn't pity Yu Fengzi at all. On the viewing platform, Buddha Supreme Shi Yi looked gloomy and didn't say anything for a long time. He couldn't blame Lin Sun. When Yu Fengzi used the Brahma Heart Lotus for the first time, he explained the mystery of this magic to a group of big shots with a smile, thinking that it would cut off Lin Sun's cultivation. But Yu Fengzi failed. Now, Yu Fengzi used the Brahma Heart Lotus again, but his cultivation was cut off by Lin Sun. It was like karma. Shi Yi had no reason to blame Lin Sun at all. If he angrily accused Lin Sun of being too ruthless, he was afraid that everyone present would laugh at him. After all, it was Yu Fengzi who tried to cut off Lin Sun's cultivation first. The faces of the big shots of the witch cult, the 10 immortal giants, and other forces were also gloomy. The appearance of the Blade of Time had deeply stimulated them. If Lin Sun, who had set foot on the path of immortal supremacy, was only a potential threat to them, then Lin Sun, who had the Blade of Time, could already be included in the list of enemies. The Master of the Square Inch was in trouble, and so was the Lord of Tongtian. Haha, who knows what will happen in the future? In the gloomy atmosphere, a big shot of the Jing family said, as if he was recalling the past, but the meaning in his words was faintly cold and threatening. Many people's eyes flashed. How powerful was the Master of the Heart Core? He had once forced the 10 undying giants to bow their heads and voluntarily give way to the 9th heaven. But in the end, didn't he also suffer in the 9th heaven? Luo Tong Tian possessed a forbidden sacred art and was once strong enough to wrestle with the 10 undying giants. However, in the end, when he was heading towards the eternal road, he suffered a great calamity. Perhaps Lin Sun had already embarked on the path of the immortal supremacy, Or perhaps he had mastered Luo Tongtian's forbidden divine art. But after all, he was still in the heavenly longevity realm. He had not truly grown into an existence like the master of the heart core and Luo Tongtian. In the future, there was no guarantee that he wouldn't be in trouble. No one knows who will suffer in the future. If there is a chance in the future, I don't mind going to the 8th heaven and having a good chat in front of your Jing family's gate. I just hope that you can still remember what you said today. In the Tianqi Taoist field, Lin Sun looked at the leader of the Jing family coldly. His words didn't contain any threatening words, but anyone could hear the threat in his words. The face of the leader of the Jing family suddenly sank. His name was Jing Chaofeng, and he was also a very senior and powerful existence. Now that he was contradicted by Lin Sun in front of everyone, he was very angry. Then I really hope that you will have a chance to go to the 8th heaven. The atmosphere was tense and depressing. At this moment, Xian Feiling laughed loudly. The duel is over. Our Yuan sect has set up a banquet. Everyone, why don't you come with us? Let us be the host. It seemed like he was trying to smooth things over, but it made the big figures on the viewing platform feel disgusted. At this time, who was in the mood to attend a banquet? Who wanted to see how the Yuan sect would show off? The discussion of the 9 peaks is over. We still have important things to do, so we won't disturb you any longer. On the viewing platform, some big figures stood up expressionlessly and decided to leave. Immediately after, many big forces also stood up and left. Xian Feiling enthusiastically asked them to stay, but the more he did so, the more the old monsters from the Witch sect, Zen sect, and the 10 Undying Giants felt disgusted. Seeing this, Xian Feiling couldn't help but show a look of regret. He really wanted to use today's matter to satirize and ridicule those old things at the banquet. Unfortunately, they didn't give him a chance at all. Not long after, even Yu Fengzi, whose cultivation had been cut off, was picked up by the big figures of Zen sect and left in a hurry. Lin Sun naturally wouldn't stop them. Although Yu Fengzi's cultivation was not completely destroyed, he suffered such a blow. Even if he recovered in the future, he probably wouldn't have much hope to rebuild his current achievement. In short, this natural-born Buddha was already crippled. Soon, only the people of the Spirit Sect's ancestral court were left on the viewing platform. Qingyun, do you want to stay and have a drink? Fang Daoping smiled and invited Qingyun. No. Qingyun shook his head and cupped his hands from afar. It's an eventful time. Please take care. Fang Daoping was startled and said seriously, when you go back, say hello to those friends on behalf of our Yuan sect. That's natural. Qingyun nodded and then left with a group of strong people of the Spirit sect. Senior sister, I'll treat you to a drink next time. Lin Sun had already walked out of the Tianqi dojo. Seeing that Qing Yu was about to leave with a group of people, he couldn't help but feel a little reluctant. Junior brother, you also have to take care. Qing Yu revealed a bright smile. Lin Sun smiled and waved his hand. After watching them leave, deafening cheers suddenly erupted in the vicinity of the Tianqi dojo. The big figures and successors of the Yuan sect no longer suppressed the excitement in their hearts. They cheered for Lin Sun and expressed their joy and respect without reservation. Today was the 9 Peaks Summit that the Yuan sect held once in 1,000 years. It was also today that Lin Sun went on stage and defeated Xing Jun, Jing Qingjia, Zhong Ying, Zhu Tianyu, Yu Fengzi, and 9 other fierce figures from different forces. This not only defended the Yuan sect's face, but it also made everyone in the Yuan sect proud. So what if it was the Shaman sect? So what if it was the 10 immortal giants? In a battle of the same realm, no one was a match for Lin Sun. Thinking of what they had seen before, everyone in the Yuan sect was so excited that they couldn't control themselves. It was not that their state of mind was not strong enough, but that they were simply unwilling to suppress their inner emotions and release them wantonly. Lin Sun inevitably felt unprepared. He didn't expect that the reaction of the Yuan sect would be so enthusiastic. It was also at this time that he remembered what Tao Ling said, "This is an opportunity to gather people's hearts. It will be of immeasurable benefit to you to establish prestige and influence in the sect in the future." Wasn't this situation exactly like this? What was prestige? The hearts of the people and the expectations of the people. Xian Feiling, Du Guyong, Fang Daoping, and other big figures couldn't help laughing when they saw this scene. Brother Dugu, your Yuan Su Pavilion is in charge of all kinds of rewards and rewards of the sect. How do you think Lin Sun should be rewarded based on his performance today? Suddenly, Xian Feiling's loud voice spread all over the place. Suddenly, countless people's eyes were attracted to Du Guyong. Even Lin Sun was surprised. There was a reward? The hearts of Fu Wenli, Qi Xiaoyun, and other big figures who hated Lin Sun sank. They realized that Xian Feiling was taking this opportunity to seek benefits for Lin Sun. At this time, everyone in the Yuan sect was excited by Lin Sun's previous feat. If anyone didn't agree to Xian Feiling's request for benefits for him, they would be condemned by everyone. Thinking of this, Fu Wenli, Qi Xiaoyun, and others were all depressed. But they couldn't do anything to stop it. Today, Lin Sun fought on behalf of the sect, restored the reputation of the sect, and made those big forces lower their heads one by one. This can be said to be a great achievement, and he should be rewarded generously. Du Guyong's words determined the value of Lin Sun's contribution. He must be rewarded generously. Yes, that's right. Many people echoed. Even if Deputy Deacon Lin is appointed as the deputy head now, I will support it. Someone shouted excitedly. This caused a burst of laughter, but it also showed how popular Lin Sun was at this moment. After pondering for a while, Du Guyong said, "If we take out some ordinary rewards, I'm afraid it will make people laugh. Well, there are still 3 Nirvana elixirs in the sect. Let's take out one of them as a reward for Lin Sun." The whole audience was shocked. The faces of Fu Wenli, Qi Xiaoyun, and others who hated Lin Sun changed. Nirvana elixir. It was a divine elixir refined by the rare 9th grade medicine spirit order. Only one could be refined every 10,000 years. It could play an incredible role when a heaven longevity realm practitioner was in the Nirvana realm. It was no exaggeration to say that if one swallowed this elixir, his chance of breaking through the realm would increase by 50%. Moreover, this elixir also had an amazing effect on refining the Nirvana realm. In the past, it was extremely difficult for the Heaven Longevity Realm practitioners of the 3 pavilions to get such a treasure, no matter how many contributions they made. In order to obtain such a precious treasure, one would need the agreement of the 3 pavilion masters or the 9 vice pavilion masters. It could be imagined how rare and precious the Nirvana elixir was. Lin Sun naturally knew about this elixir, but he didn't expect that Du Guyong would take out such a treasure as a reward. "I agree. I agree too." Immediately, Xian Feiling, Fang Daoping, Yu Xing, and Yuan Wutian agreed. "What do you think, Brother Fu?" Du Guyong looked at Fu Wenli. At this moment, all eyes were focused on Fu Wenli. Even with his temperament, he couldn't help cursing at this moment. At this moment, how could he dare not agree? Fu Wenli said expressionlessly, "You can do as you see fit." Du Guyong laughed and said, "Brother Fu is of noble character and unquestionable integrity." Then, he looked at Qi Xiaoyun. "What do you think, Brother Qi?" Qi Xiaoyun couldn't help but say, "This man killed my great-grandson Qi Lingzhen. How dare you ask for my opinion?" His voice was full of anger. The scene immediately became silent. Many people in the Yuan school felt uncomfortable. Wasn't Qi Lingzhen asking for his own death? Just because he was the great-grandson of Qi Xiaoyun, could he refuse to give Lin Sun a reward at this moment? Du Guyong raised his eyebrows and said, "So, Brother Qi refused?" At this moment, under the gaze of countless people, Qi Xiaoyun also felt great pressure and noticed the change of the atmosphere in the field. He was silent for a long time and said, "You don't need to ask me about the decision." Du Guyong laughed. Brother Chi is broad-minded. You are really different from ordinary people. These words caused Qi Xiaoyun's expression to become unsightly. This was called being broad-minded? You forced me to do this. Duguyong looked at Qi Wen and Tang Qiu again. Now only the opinions of the two deputy pavilion masters were left. No need to ask, I have no opinion. Qi Wen was expressionless. You have agreed. How dare I have any opinion? Tang Qiu pretended to tease, but in fact, he was so depressed that he was about to explode. Duguyong smiled and felt refreshed. He hadn't seen Fu Wenli being so deflated for a long time. This feeling was great. At this point, the 9 deputy pavilion masters all agreed to reward Lin Sun with a nirvana elixir. Chapter 2864. The 9 deputy pavilion heads unanimously agreed to reward Lin Sun with the nirvana elixir, which caused a sensation in the audience. No one thought it was wrong. Lin Sun's achievements today could be recorded in the history of Yuan Church, which would shine for thousands of years. Only those old people knew that Fu Wenli and Qi Xiaoyun were reluctant to agree. Lin Sun had united the hearts of Yuan Church, and Duguyong took advantage of the situation. At this time, Fu Wenli and others had to agree. For Lin Sun, this was really a pleasant surprise. Since Yuan Void Pavilion has offered such a generous reward, Brother Fong, shouldn't Yuan Clear Pavilion also express something? Xian Feiling asked with a smile. What else? The audience was stunned. Fong Daoping said, Yuan Clear Pavilion will not be stingy. Lin Sun is now in the middle stage of Heaven Life Realm, and he is not far from the late stage of Heaven Life Realm. Well, Yuan Clear Pavilion is willing to offer a deacon. As long as Lin Sun breaks through to the late stage of Heaven Life Realm, he can be promoted to one of the deacons of Yuan Clear Pavilion without any assessment. It was earth-shattering. The audience was in a complete uproar. Deacon. Although it was not as powerful as the 9 Peak Masters, it was enough to be on an equal footing with the 9 Peak Masters in terms of duties. Generally speaking, the conditions to become a deacon were extremely harsh. Reaching the late stage of Heaven Life Realm was only the minimum requirement. In addition, one had to complete a sect task issued by the deputy pavilion head of Yuan Clear Pavilion, which was often extremely difficult. Finally, he could challenge a certain deacon of the 3 pavilions and take over his position. But now, as the deputy pavilion head of Yuan Clear Pavilion, Fong Daoping directly promised that as long as Lin Sun broke through, he could be promoted to a deacon smoothly. How could people not be shocked? This is not appropriate. Tang Qiu, the deputy pavilion head of Yuan Clear Pavilion, was the first to object. There has never been such a precedent in our sect since ancient times. Moreover, Lin Sun has just been a deputy deacon for a few months. How can we promise him the position of deacon casually? Deputy pavilion head Tang, I said before that he can become a deacon when he breaks through, Fong Daoping said calmly. Tang Qiu's face was gloomy. If Lin Sun becomes a deacon, one of the 12 deacons of Yuanqing Pavilion has to be relieved of his duties. What's more, Lin Sun is a deputy deacon of Yuankong Pavilion after all, but he has to occupy one of the deacons of Yuanqing Pavilion. Isn't it unreasonable? The atmosphere became much quieter. Everyone realized that Tang Qiu and other elders would not easily agree on the issue of the deacon's position, nor would they tolerate Lin Sun's rapid promotion. Ha ha ha, Tang Qiu is right. Lin Sun is the deputy deacon of Yuankong Pavilion. How can we let you poach him? Xian Feiling laughed out loud. Tang Qiu was secretly relieved by his attitude. However, Xian Feiling's next words made Fu Wenli and Qi Xiaoyun anxious. Xian Feiling said, Since your Yuanqing Pavilion is willing to offer a position of deacon, we naturally can't be stingy. Let's do it this way. As long as Lin Sun makes a breakthrough in his cultivation, he can become a deacon of Yuanqing Pavilion. The entire audience was in an uproar, and the atmosphere became even more subtle. Authority had always been more precious than external things. In Yuan sect, the more authority one had, the more cultivation resources one could obtain, and the more power one could control. A deacon could already be on an equal footing with the 9 peaks heads. He could dispatch deputy deacons and disciples to work for him. He could also select core disciples from the 9 peaks for his own use. He could even, the power he held was far greater than that of a deputy deacon. That was why when Fang Daoping and Xian Failing proposed to promise Lin Sun a position of deacon, there was such an uproar and Tang Qiu was so resistant and repulsed. At this time, Fu Wenli and Qi Xiaoyun were also anxious. They were also deputy heads of Yuankong Pavilion. Naturally, they didn't want Lin Sun to be promoted to a deacon in their territory. It's not appropriate, Fu Wenli said in a low voice. Each of the 12 deacons of Yuankong Pavilion has made countless contributions to the sect. Each of them is a senior in the sect and has always been prestigious. How can they give up a position and let Lin Sun take it? Lin Sun's contribution today is indeed great, but he has already been rewarded with a nirvana elixir, which has broken the precedent. If he is rewarded with another position of deacon, it is obviously against the rules. Qi Xiaoyun also said with a gloomy face. They must fight to the end on this matter. They couldn't let Lin Sun get what he wanted. Xian Failing frowned. He had a hunch that he would be opposed when he proposed this reward, but he didn't expect that Fu Wenli and the others would oppose it so fiercely. Thank you for your kindness, seniors. At this moment, Lin Sun opened his mouth and his voice spread all over the audience. This reward is too great. Even if it is given, I dare not accept it. All the audience looked askance at him. Xian Failing, De Guyong, and Fang Daoping looked at each other and smiled bitterly in their hearts. Didn't this guy know that he was seeking great benefits for himself? Fu Wenli and other seniors who hated Lin Sun all breathed a sigh of relief. Haha, you see, even Lin Sun refused it. It's better to let it go. Fu Wenli laughed. That's how it should be. Qi Xiaoyun was expressionless. Lin Sun is sensible. You'd better not force him to do it. Tang Qiupi smiled but didn't smile. This made Xian Failing, De Guyong, and others a little embarrassed. But Lin Sun suddenly laughed heartily and said, Don't worry, when I am qualified to be a deacon, I will seek for it according to the rules of the sect, so as not to be gossiped about. Fu Wenli and others were stunned. How could they not hear the sarcasm in Lin Sun's words? Hearing Lin Sun's words, many people in Yuan school became hot-blooded and shouted, Good job, Deputy Deacon Lin. That's what a man should do. Yes, who can say anything about it? When the time comes, let's be witnesses for Deputy Deacon Lin, in case there are any twists and turns when he is promoted to a deacon. No one in Yuan school, no matter how high or low their cultivation was stupid. Each one was smarter and more talented than the other. At this moment, how could they not see Fu Wenli and Qi Xiaoyun's resistance and rejection to Lin Sun? Lin Sun's performance aroused the blood of the people present, and they cheered for him. This was probably what people wanted. Seeing this scene, Fu Wenli and others felt a lot heavier. After today's events, Lin Sun's prestige had undoubtedly been deeply rooted in the hearts of Yuan school. Old people who remained neutral, such as Yu Wuchou, the head of the first peak, appreciated and supported Lin Sun's change of attitude. These changes could undoubtedly make Lin Sun stand more firmly and take a deeper root in Yuan school. Since Lin Sun has made up his mind, let's not mention this matter anymore. But it's not reasonable to just reward him with a nirvana elixir, Xian Failing said. His words caused Fu Wenli and the others to feel depressed in their hearts. Again? Was there no end to it? What do you think the reward should be? De Guyong continued. Xian Failing said, Although Lin Sun's combat strength is strong, his cultivation is only at the middle stage of heavenly longevity realm. He is far from being able to display his talent. Why don't we let him go to the extreme path battlefield, to cultivate for a period of time? Maybe he can improve his cultivation as soon as possible. Extreme path battlefield. Many people were shocked, and they had different expressions. Some were envious, some were shocked, some were fearful, and some were fanatical and yearning. The extreme path battlefield was one of the forbidden areas of Yuan School. It was specially created by the Yuan School's leader for the immortal realm expert. Entering it, one would suffer unimaginable extreme training. From the ancient times until now, it was unknown how many immortal realm experts had broken through their cultivation in the extreme path battlefield. But at the same time, there were many immortal realm experts who couldn't endure such terrifying training, resulting in problems in their state of mind and cultivation. Even so, not everyone was qualified to enter. In the 3 pavilions, only immortal realm experts who had made great contributions would be arranged to enter the extreme path battlefield to train. The reason was that for immortal realm experts, although the extreme path battlefield was extremely dangerous, it was also the best place to make breakthroughs in cultivation. Just this alone was enough to make those immortal realm experts unable to resist. Then it's decided. This time, Duguyong didn't ask for other people's opinions. He immediately made the decision, because the extreme path battlefield was originally under the jurisdiction of the Yuanshu Pavilion. Fu Wenli and the others didn't have the chance to refuse. In reality, they couldn't refuse either. Previously, they had stopped Lin Sun from obtaining the deacon position. If they stopped Lin Sun from entering the extreme path battlefield now, it would probably cause conflict and opposition from the entire sect. This caused them to feel depressed in their hearts. The matter was settled, and the final reward given to Lin Sun was a Nirvana Myriad Transformation pill and a chance to train in the extreme path battlefield. Lin Sun was naturally very satisfied with this result. That night, the entire Yuan school gathered in front of the Central Dao Palace and participated in a celebration banquet. After the 9 Peaks discourse, there would usually be such a celebration banquet. However, this time, Lin Sun became the focus of the celebration banquet. As for Fu Wenli, Qi Xiaoyun, and the others who hated Lin Sun, they all left after a while. After they left, the atmosphere of the banquet became livelier. Many familiar and unfamiliar people of the Yuan school took the initiative to toast. Lin Sun naturally didn't refuse any of them. This grand banquet didn't end until the early hours of the morning. Yuan Kong Mountain. In the blessed enclave, after Lin Sun returned, he couldn't help but fall into deep thought as he thought about today's experience. He originally thought that the 9 Peaks discourse had nothing to do with him, but after the 9 Peaks discourse ended, the major forces that came to watch the ceremony all pointed at him. The witchcraft sect, the Zen sect, the 10 immortal magnates. They clearly came prepared and wanted to use this opportunity to test his strength. It could be foreseen that after they left this time, the forces behind them would probably put him on the list of great enemies. Lin Sun wasn't worried about this. At least with the Yuan school's protection, those enemies wouldn't dare to act rashly. The only thing he had to be wary of was that he had to be more careful and cautious when he traveled in the future. Thinking about today's harvest, Lin Sun couldn't help but smile. Obtaining the Nirvana Myriad Transformation pill and the chance to enter the extreme path battlefield could be considered a pleasant surprise. But more importantly, after today's incident, he had obtained the approval and support of most people in the Yuan school. This was the most precious. Chapter 2865. While thinking, Lin Sun suddenly thought of one thing. He made a gesture with both hands. The finger between his eyebrows suddenly glowed. Immediately, a wisp of mysterious chaotic light rushed out. In an instant, it expanded countless times and turned into a bronze coffin. The coffin lid was engraved with ancient patterns such as the starry sky, the sun, the moon, the mountains and rivers, flowers, birds, insects, fish, and other ancient patterns. It gave off a strong sense of vicissitude. Staring at it, Lin Sun was in a trance. The eternal coffin. At that time, the gate to heaven was like a key that had a perfect fit with the coffin. And in the center of the bronze coffin, the gate to heaven had turned into a mysterious star chart symbol. It was like a mysterious vortex, but also like a black hole in the starry sky. But in Lin Sun's eyes, the star map symbol was more like a big abyss. Now, Lin Sun understood that the eternal coffin needed to be awakened by his devouring abyss bloodline, and the gate to heaven was a key that could open the coffin. However, because of Master Lu's obstruction, Lin Sun didn't open the coffin and didn't know what was hidden in it. The reason was that Lin Sun didn't have enough cultivation at that time and didn't step on the path of immortality. But now, he was already in the middle stage of heavenly longevity realm and could open the coffin. Staring at the eternal coffin, Lin Sun couldn't help but think of what Master Lu said. This coffin is called eternal. It was obtained by your great-grandfather in the ruins of fate when he was young. With this coffin, your great-grandfather had the forbidden talent of devouring abyss. It is precisely with this talent that your great-grandfather changed his fate. After leaving the ruins of good fortune, he advanced all the way on the path of cultivation, showing unparalleled brilliance. At his peak, the power he possessed was so tyrannical that even the top 10 immortal giants of the 8th heaven were afraid of him. Your great-grandfather once said that the eternal coffin was related to the way of eternity. It was also from this coffin that your great-grandfather found the secret map to the eternal star path. As for the secrets hidden in it, you have to explore it yourself. Thinking of the past, Lin Sun's heart fluctuated. After a long time, Lin Sun took a deep breath and stood in front of the coffin of eternity. He reached out and pressed the mysterious star map symbol in the center of the coffin lid. All of a sudden, Lin Sun felt his whole body shake, and the blood vessels in his body seemed to be boiling, producing a strange rhythm. In the end, even his spiritual vein became scorching hot. Buzz. At the same time, the eternal coffin, which was full of vicissitudes, produced a slight tremor, which resonated with Lin Sun's chi. As Lin Sun pressed his hand on the ground, the mysterious star map symbols rotated and turned into abyss-like light and shadow, which seemed to swallow Lin Sun whole. This scene was extremely strange. Soon, with a dull sound of friction, the lid of the bronze coffin became loose. Lin Sun pushed it hard with his palm, revealing a gap. A strand of a faint sigh seemed to resound from the depths of the crevice. At this moment, Lin Sun's hair stood on end, and he felt a fatal fear. His heart seemed to be grasped by an invisible hand. Almost subconsciously, he abruptly closed the lid of the coffin, and withdrew his hand from the center of the coffin lid. Suddenly, the unspeakable fear disappeared. But the back of Lin Sun's clothes were soaked with cold sweat, and his face was uncertain. The feeling just now couldn't be an illusion. It was so horrible that he even had a premonition that if he continued to push the coffin open, he would probably encounter an unimaginable disaster. Master Lu said that when I set foot on the path of immortality, I could open the coffin. But now it seems that the secret hidden in the coffin is far more terrible than what Master Lu said. Lin Sun took a deep breath. Is it possible that my current cultivation is not enough to open the coffin? At this moment, a sudden fluctuation came from the abyssal sword cauldron. Lin Sun probed it with his spiritual awareness and immediately heard Xia Zhi's cry, "Lin Sun, don't leave me! I don't want to go!" Her voice was full of anxiety and panic. Lin Sun's pupils shrank. Inside the abyssal sword cauldron, Xia Zhi was curled up on the ground, hugging her knees tightly with a look of panic and fear. Lin Sun felt a sharp pain in his heart. It was the first time that he saw Xia Zhi so panicked, helpless and scared since he was a child. What was wrong with Xia Zhi? In the past, she wouldn't even frown in the face of death. "Xia Zhi, don't be afraid. I'm here," Lin Sun said softly, restraining his inner doubts. Xia Zhi, who was curled up in the abyssal sword cauldron, suddenly raised her head. A trace of confusion and trance flashed across her clear and beautiful eyes. Gradually, she calmed down and stopped trembling, as if Lin Sun's existence made her feel incomparably safe. "What happened just now?" Lin Sun asked softly. Xia Ji shook her head. I don't know. I just felt that someone was calling me and wanting to take me away. The voice was instinctively irresistible. Lin Sun clenched his hands quietly. He recalled that when the coffin of eternity revealed a sliver of a gap just now, there seemed to be a faint sigh. It was very likely that this voice caused such great panic to Xia Ji that she was afraid of being taken away from him. Don't worry. It's all right now. Lin Sun comforted her softly. Lin Sun, don't leave me behind. Xia Ji said seriously. At this moment, she was like a pitiful and helpless deer, which made Lin Sun's heart ache. I won't. No one can take you away from me. I swear. Lin Sun looked unprecedentedly serious. Xia Ji grunted. At this time, she seemed to be extremely tired and gradually fell asleep. Her slender and graceful body was curled up there, and the black brim of her hat covered her pretty face, revealing only a section of her snow-white and crystal-clear chin. After a long time, Lin Sun withdrew his gaze and gradually calmed down. Then, he looked at the eternal coffin again and recalled a secret that Master Lu had told him years ago. This secret was related to his great-grandfather, Luo Tongtian. Not long after Luo Tongtian obtained the eternal coffin in the ruins of fortune, he once told Lu Boya that obtaining this item gave him a chance to change his fate. But at the same time, it also tainted him with the karma of fate. For this, Luo Tongtian was deeply worried. He did not know whether this karma was good or bad, but he deduced that this karma would appear on his descendants, and according to Lu Boya's analysis, this karma related to fate had come true for Lin Sun. Because there was the power of the shackles of fate in Xia Ji's body. When Lin Sun learned this secret, he felt that it was incredible. The eternal coffin from the ruins of fortune gave Luo Tongtian the talent of devouring abyss, but it also tainted him with a karma related to fate. This karma, after countless years, came true for his great-grandson because of the appearance of Xia Ji. Anyone who heard such a thing would probably feel that it was incredible, but at this moment, Lin Sun faintly felt that this seemingly unimaginable karma of fate was very likely to be true. The ruins of fortune, the eternal coffin, the devouring abyss, karma of fate, if all these were causes, then he and Xia Ji were effects. The intersection of fate was just like a drink and a peck, and cause and effect were born together. The ruins of fortune. Lin Sun had a strong impulse to go to the ruins of fortune immediately. Because the mysterious ruins of Tao not only involved the eternal coffin, Xia Ji, and him, but also his parents were still trapped in it. In the past years, he did not go to the ruins of fortune because he was not strong enough. But now this was no longer a problem. The next morning, Lin Sun went to Wild Cloud House to visit the Deputy Pavilion Master Xian Feiling. Xian Feiling was one of the big shots in the Yuan sect that he trusted the most. You plan to go to the ruins of fortune? Xian Feiling could not help but be surprised when he learned of Lin Sun's intention. Since ancient times, among the 4 ruins of Tao, besides the ruins of wonders, the ruins of fortune are the most mysterious and dangerous. A long time ago, many old guys in the eternal world went to explore the ruins of fortune, but there were only 2 results. One was that they could not find the ruins of fortune at all. The other was that after entering the ruins of fortune, they would encounter great danger. They would either die or retreat in a sorry state. Very few people could obtain fortunes and opportunities from there. Speaking of this, Xian Feiling looked at Lin Sun. I said this not to dissuade you, but to remind you that with your current cultivation, it is too dangerous to go to that place now. Lin Sun was silent for a moment and said, Senior, I have made up my mind. Xian Feiling smiled, as if he was not surprised, and said, If you really want to go to the extreme battlefield to train first. If you can break through to the late stage of Heaven Longevity Realm, you will have more confidence to go there. After a pause, he said, When you come out of the extreme battlefield, I will introduce you to a person. With his guidance, It will be of great help to you when you go to the ruins of fortune. Who? Xian Feiling smiled meaningfully. When you see him, you will know. Lin Sun could not help but feel a little helpless. Senior, why do I have to wait until I break through? Xian Feiling stared at him and said, the place to enter the extreme battlefield to train is precious. Dugu Yong and I went through a lot of trouble to get it for you. Don't you cherish it? Lin Sun had no choice but to agree since he had put it this way. Go. With your ability, you may be able to break through the extreme battlefield in less than a year. At that time, I will give you a surprise. Xian Feiling said with a smile. Then I will take my leave first, Senior. Lin Sun did not delay. He saluted and turned to leave. Those old things in the eternal world know that Luo Tongtian's eternal coffin and devouring abyss were obtained from the ruins of fortune. Boy, you are now in the teeth of the storm. If you go to the ruins of fortune at this time, you will be chased by those enemies. Xian Feiling murmured in his heart, it is not too late to go after this period of time. Shaking his head, he stood up. He decided to go to the Yuanshu pavilion and see the pavilion master who had been concentrating on cultivation for countless years and ignored the affairs of the world. P.S. I will update tonight. Chapter 2866. Yuanshu Pavilion. At the entrance of the polar battlefield. You need to stay there for at least half a year. Within half a year, you can't leave even if you are seriously injured. Dugu Yong introduced warmly on one side. When Lin Sun came here, he, the deputy head of Yuanshu Pavilion, was alarmed, so he personally led Lin Sun to the entrance of the polar battlefield. Lin Sun was a little flattered. When he first entered Yuan sect, it was almost difficult for him to meet a big shot at the level of deputy head, not to mention that the other party took the initiative to entertain him. Half a year Lin Sun didn't think for too long. If you are ready, you can go in now, Dugu Yong said. Thank you for your guidance. Lin Sun cupped his hands and saluted, and then walked straight into the entrance of the polar battlefield. Buzz, with a burst of light rain, Lin Sun's figure disappeared. Yuan, why are you here? At this moment, Dugu Yong turned around and saw a beautiful figure in a cyan dress coming from afar. It was Dugu Yuan. Can't I come to see you? Dugu Yuan said with a smile. Dugu Yong pointed at Dugu Yuan with a smile. You don't mean what you say. Dugu Yuan blinked her watery eyes and said, Granduncle, what did you say? Why can't I understand? Well, can't I see through your mind? Dugu Yong sneered. I just want to tell you that Lin Sun carries a heavy burden on his shoulders. In the future, he will experience extraordinary storms. If you really want to be with him, you have to think clearly about what you will face after being with him. Dugu Yuan blushed and said, Granduncle, when did I say I would be with him? I just regard him as a friend. Just a friend? Dugu Yong's eyes were complicated. Dugu Yuan lowered her head and said, Granduncle, don't worry about my affairs. Looking at her appearance, Dugu Yong inexplicably felt pity for her and said, Yuan, you can make your own decision. I only have one request. Don't wrong yourself. Dugu Yuan raised her head and said with a bright smile, Granduncle, I'm not the kind of person who will wrong myself. That's good. Dugu Yong laughed heartily. However, he added in his heart, I hope that's the case. Time flew by and a month quickly passed. Extreme Dao Battle Zone. Under the gray sky, Lin Sun and the other Lin Sun were fighting fiercely. They fought so fiercely that the sky and the earth were turned upside down. This scene was very strange. If others saw the fight between the two Lin Sun, they might not be able to tell which one was the real Lin Sun. Moreover, even though the combat methods they utilized were different and the energy of the Grand Daos they grasped were different, their combat strengths were practically on par. This was even more terrifying. It should be known that Lin Sun had already stepped onto the path of the Eternal Supreme Exalt. Even though his cultivation was at the middle stage of the heavenly longevity realm, he seemed to be invincible in this realm. But now, his opponent was so powerful. This was unbelievable. Die! Suddenly, Lin Sun let out a long roar. His figure, like a violent furnace of chaos, smashed down fiercely. Bang! His opponent's body trembled violently before exploding with a loud bang, turning into an obscure rain of order light that filled the sky. Lin Sun let out a long breath of turbid air, and felt exhausted all over. The battle went on for more than 4 hours. He had been unleashing his full strength at all times. By now, his cultivation base had been almost completely exhausted. Without delay, he floated to the ground, sat cross-legged at the first time, took out an immortal pill of sun and moon, and began to restore his cultivation with all his strength. There was silence between the heaven and the earth. Only Lin Sun's qi was roaring, and his divine light was flowing. Over the past month, he had fought a total of 14 times. Each time, his opponent came from the rules of this world. This rule was called Tao Mirror, which was extremely incredible. It could create an opponent that was exactly the same as himself, just like a mirror image of himself. Moreover, the combat strength of his opponent would change every time. If Lin Sun's extreme combat strength was 1 when he defeated his opponent, then the combat strength of his opponent would transform into 1 in the next battle. This also meant that if Lin wanted to defeat the next opponent, he had to exhaust all means to tap his potential, improve his combat power, and turn himself from 1 to 2 within 1 day before he met the next opponent. Only in this way could he defeat the opponent. This was the extreme battlefield. Every battle forced him to tap his own potential. Only in this way could he have a chance to defeat his opponent in the next battle. Defeating the opponent could be exchanged for a day's rest. Once the time passed, a new opponent would be born from the rules of Tao Mirror. Lin Sun didn't know what would happen to him if he was defeated, because he had never been defeated in 14 battles since he entered the extreme battlefield. This meant that every single time he won a battle, the potential in his body would be excavated slightly, and his strength would grow slightly stronger. Now, after a full month, even Lin Sun noticed the significant changes in his strength. The most obvious was that his cultivation had been honed to the peak of the middle stage of heavenly longevity realm. According to this situation, I can achieve a breakthrough in cultivation in less than 3 months. Lin Sun meditated while feeling the subtle changes in his strength. Every battle was like fighting with himself. It was extremely fierce. Occasionally, even Lin Sun would be suppressed and injured. At the same time, this could be regarded as an excellent tempering, so that he could get the best beating in the battle, so that he could tap more potential and realize the transformation of his strength. My cultivation and physical strength can no longer be improved. If I want to defeat my next opponent, I can only improve my immortal law. Lin Sun didn't dare to delay and devoted himself to tapping his own potential. There were only 24 hours in a day. For Lin Sun, it was like an extreme cultivation, so that he didn't dare to have any distracting thoughts, and he didn't dare to waste any time. This was an invisible oppression and restriction. If it were someone else, they would have been unable to bear this pressure. But Lin Sun was willing to endure it. Nothing could make people happier than the continuous transformation of strength. Unknowingly, a day had passed. With a strange fluctuation between heaven and earth, a figure like Lin Sun's mirror image condensed in the void. The powerful aura emitted from it was the same as that of Lin Sun in the last battle. This was the abnormal part of the extreme battlefield. The opponent's combat power would also improve with the improvement of the practitioner's own strength. However, the practitioner had a day to temper himself, tap his potential, and improve his cultivation, so as to gain a certain advantage in the battle. It was worth mentioning that in the extreme battlefield, it was impossible to use any external objects except his own cultivation, including immortal weapons. Whoosh! As soon as the mirror image of Lin Sun appeared, it rushed over. Lin Sun, who was sitting cross-legged in meditation, suddenly opened his eyes and jumped up. Time passed quickly. 3 hours later. In the extreme battlefield, Lin Sun, who had just experienced a fierce battle, was covered with blood, his clothes were broken, and his hair was disheveled. He was injured. And he was seriously injured. Not every time after a battle, one would be able to tap one's potential and transform one's combat strength within a short day. Just like this time, when he fought with his opponent, their combat power was almost the same. This battle was also extremely hard and tragic. In the end, it was Lin Sun who comprehended some essence in the battle and realized Tao in the fighting that let Lin Sun seize the opportunity to kill his opponent. Otherwise, Lin Sun didn't know how long this battle would last. Whoosh! With a long breath, Lin Sun landed on the ground. He took out the mutton-fat jade bottle and poured more than a dozen immortal sun-moon elixirs into his mouth. Then he began to sit cross-legged in meditation. Boom! In less than a quarter of an hour, the aura around him rumbled, and a terrifying aura surged from his body and surged into the sky. The injuries on his body healed at an incredible speed, and his whole body glowed with unprecedented vigor, as if he had been reborn. At this moment, Lin Sun broke through to the late stage of longevity realm. It was only 3 months. Before entering the extreme battlefield, Xian Feiling had speculated that Lin Sun would break through to the late stage of longevity realm within a year. If he saw this scene, he didn't know what he would think. Lin Sun felt the amazing changes in his body wantonly and greedily, and his heart was full of joy and satisfaction. If one counted the time, it hadn't even been a year since he stepped foot into the heavenly longevity realm, yet he'd already attained the advanced stage of this realm. Such a speed of breakthrough could absolutely be said to be world-shocking. Ordinary immortals might not be able to improve their cultivation in thousands of years. Lin Sun's rapid progress could be seen from such a comparison. 1 day later, a new mirror image of Lin Sun appeared with amazing power, but its strength was the same as before Lin Sun broke through. Soon after the battle began, it was killed by Lin Sun. I have to stay in the extreme battlefield for half a year before I can leave. Now there are only about 3 months left. I have to take advantage of this opportunity. Lin Sun made a decision secretly. According to the rules, he had to fight in the extreme battlefield for at least half a year. If it weren't for his concern about the ruins of fate, Lin Sun really wanted to stay in the extreme battlefield. Half a year later, Yuan Su Pavilion, the entrance of the extreme battlefield. Xian Feiling had been waiting there for a long time. He was sure that Lin Sun would not stay in the extreme battlefield for 1 more day. I just don't know if he has broken through. While he was thinking, there was an obscure fluctuation at the entrance of the extreme battlefield, and a tall figure came out. It was Lin Sun. However, when he saw Lin Sun on the first day, Xian Feiling couldn't help narrowing his eyes. Compared with half a year ago, Lin Sun at this moment was like a different person. His whole body was surrounded by wisps of extremely faint killing intent, and when his eyes opened and closed, he gave people an oppressive momentum of killing. Lin Sun was like a peerless sword that had been tempered thousands of times. Although he tried his best to suppress his sharpness, the breath that inadvertently overflowed was enough to shock the world. But immediately, this wisp of faint killing intent and oppressive breath disappeared. Looking at Lin Sun again, he was as indifferent as before. His breath was natural, and there was no trace of uncomfortable sharpness anymore. Xian Feiling's eyes suddenly lit up. P.S. Send more updates to me. Chapter 2867. I didn't expect you to break through in half a year. Xian Feiling exclaimed. It had been more than 2 years since Lin Sun joined the sect. Now he had reached the late stage of longevity realm. This speed of breakthrough was undoubtedly amazing. Moreover, Lin Sun's Tao was very special, which made Xian Feiling doubt that Lin Sun's current combat power was enough to surpass the ancient and modern times and be unrivaled in this realm. Lin Sun smiled and cupped his hands. Senior, you flatter me. He didn't tell Xian Feiling that as early as 3 months ago, He had stepped into the late stage of longevity realm. After 3 months of tempering, his cultivation was faintly approaching the full completion of longevity realm. Let's go, I'll take you to see someone. Xian Feiling smiled and turned away with Lin Sun. Yuan Su Pavilion. Mysterious enlightenment, forbidden land. When Lin Sun saw Xian Feiling bring him here, he couldn't help but be stunned and said, "This seems to be, yes, the place where the head of Yuan Su Pavilion practices in seclusion. This old guy has been practicing in seclusion for almost 80,000 years. Xian Feiling said with emotion. 80,000 years. The matters of the world had gone through ups and downs, and it was an extremely long period of time for old fellows like them who were on the eternal path towards the Tao. Lin Sun was shocked. How could he not have heard of the most mysterious and low-key head of Yuan Su Pavilion? In Yuan sect, Yuan Qing Pavilion head Yu Beihai agreed to step down after 100 years in order to prove the Tao eternity. Yuan Su Pavilion head Yan Ji had a big problem with his Tao when he was practicing, leaving only a spirit. On the other hand, the Origin Void Pavilion master had been cultivating in seclusion in the Forbidden Mystic Comprehension area for the past 80,000 years and had paid no attention to the affairs of the world. Even until now, no one knew exactly what he was comprehending in his closed-door cultivation. At this time, when Lin Sun learned that the person Xian Feiling was going to introduce him to was Yuan Su Pavilion head, he couldn't help but be curious. The entrance of the mysterious enlightenment forbidden land was covered with an obscure and mysterious sword formation. Xian Feiling stepped forward and coughed softly, saying, "Old guy, I've brought him." "Wait a minute." A clear and clean voice came out. It was just 2 words, but it was full of great majesty. Xian Feiling rolled his eyes and muttered, "He's getting more and more arrogant." His current appearance was exactly the same as Xian Juyin. This made Lin Sun feel a little weird. As expected of the Xian family. "When I was young, I befriended this old thing. We traveled the ancient path of the galaxy together, crossed the galaxy together, and traveled through the eternal true world together." Xian Feiling's eyes were suffused with reminiscence, and he sighed. "It's just like you and Little Nine. You're of the same Tao, of the same generation, and even more so, you're brothers. No matter how much time passes, no matter how the world changes, it can't erase the relationship between you and Little Nine." He smiled. "Of course, I have always been unconvinced by him, just like how Little Nine has always been unconvinced by you. But this is where the joy of cultivation lies. Fighting with others is endless joy." Lin Sun was surprised that Xian Feiling and Yuanshu Pavilion Master had such a deep friendship. "So what if you're not convinced? After so many years, aren't you still unconvinced?" That clear and bright voice rang out once more, but this time it was filled with ridicule and laughter. Then, the sword Tao restriction power around the mystic enlightenment forbidden land immediately dissipated. Xian Feiling snorted coldly and walked straight in. Lin Sun hurriedly followed him. Inside the mystic enlightenment forbidden land was a vast starry sky. Billions of stars were spread out in it, circulating and changing, sprinkling endless starlight. In the starry sky, a figure was sitting cross-legged. He was extremely tall, dressed in a linen robe, with long hair hanging loosely over his shoulders, and an elegant appearance. Behind him, there were billions of auspicious lights flowing, and a Taoist sword was faintly visible, floating and sinking in the billions of lights. It was a shocking and terrifying scene. When Lin Sun saw this figure for the first time, his eyes widened in disbelief. "Tai Xian Sword Emperor? Ha ha! This man seems to have seen through your identity." In the laughter, Xian Feiling had led Lin Sun to the center of the starry sky, in front of the stalwart figure. Looking at Lin Sun's stunned and shocked expression, Xian Feiling was very interested. In the past, Lin Sun was calm and had a sense of propriety, but he rarely showed such an expression. At the same time, the stalwart figure raised his head slightly and said with a smile, "The successor of Feng Siyuan is really extraordinary. Old weirdo Xian has told me about you. Very good. It turns out to be you, Senior. Lin Sun's heart was in turmoil. When he came here, he was very curious about the identity of the mysterious Yuanshu Pavilion Master, but he never expected that he was Taishian Sword Emperor. Lin Sun couldn't help but think of many things in the past. He still remembered that in the absolute domain of the ancient desolation, by chance, he once got the inheritance of Battle Emperor Wuang, no return. He once got the killing Buddha heart of Xingjia Buddha. He also got the inheritance of Taishian Sword Scripture left by Taishian Sword Emperor. Later, Lin Sun knew that Taishian was the first Sword Emperor in primitive times. He once united a group of great figures in primitive times to seize the origin of chaos from the dark world of the ancient way in the starry sky, and thus created the absolute domain. They did this in order to leave inheritance, preach Taoism, gather the luck of heaven and earth, and reopen the absolute path for future generations. Lin Sun didn't know how many times he admired and was shocked by such supreme broad-mindedness and boldness. Later, Lin Sun knew that Taishian Sword Emperor and Sky Punisher Sword Master once had a sword discussion in the dark world. Even the Master of the Square Inch couldn't tell which one was stronger. But Lin Sun knew that both of them were respectable people. In primitive times, Taishian was known as the first Sword Emperor in primitive times. He created Taishian Sword Scripture. He was broad-minded and bold, and he influenced an era alone. Battle Emperor Wuang, Xingjia Buddha, Divine Elephant Emperor, Dark Blood Emperor, Chen Linkong and other great figures in primitive times had accompanied him to conquer the world. And Sky Punisher Sword Master was the first sword master in the dark world of the starry sky ancient way. He was born as a red fish in the chaotic Styx River and created Sky Punisher Sword Scripture. A long time ago, Lin Sun inherited their swordsmanship, so he naturally knew how amazing their attainments in swordsmanship were. However, Lin Sun didn't know that the Taishian Sword Emperor he knew was already the Yuanshu Pavilion Master of Yuan School. At this time, it was obviously inappropriate to call him Taishian Sword Emperor. Junior Lin Sun greets Senior. After a long time, Lin Sun came to his senses and saluted. He was still a little excited. This feeling was like seeing the person he admired when he was young. It was a different feeling in his heart. Don't stand on ceremony. Taishian smiled and waved his hand. Sit down and wait for me to put down another piece. Lin Sun noticed that in the void in front of Taishian, there was a chessboard made of intertwining strands of sword qi, but there were no pieces on the chessboard. Xian Failing said casually, "This old guy is playing chess with his own Tao and the billions of stars in the starry sky." Taishian looked at the chessboard calmly and silently. Obviously, he was deducing something. Lin Sun was about to stare at it, but he was stopped by Xian Failing. He said, "The mystery of this chessboard is deduced by this old guy. If you perceive it, you will be backfired." Lin Sun's pupils shrank, and he silently dispelled the curiosity in his heart. Xian Failing sat down in the void and said, "According to what he said, this game of chess is called Contending with Me, but it has been 80,000 years. Until now, it seems like nothing has come out of it." Dealing with me, Lin Sun repeated it in his mouth and vaguely realized that this was probably a competition between Taishian and his own Tao. The biggest enemy of cultivators was often themselves. As the saying went, it was easy to kill the enemy in the world, but difficult to kill the enemy in the heart. If one didn't have great perseverance and boldness, it was very easy to fall into qi deviation and cause problems in the state of mind. And Taishian had been doing this for 80,000 years. This shocked Lin Sun. What on earth was this senior going to do? As if seeing through Lin Sun's mind, Xian Failing said lazily, "After this old guy arrived in the eternal true world, he was chosen by the head of Yuan Church, who wanted to take him as a disciple to cultivate in Yuan Church. But he, on the other hand, directly refused. Furthermore, he made an agreement with the Origin Sect's sect master. After 10,000 years, he will compete with the Origin sect master on the Great Tao. Lin Sun couldn't help but gasp. He looked at Taishan, who was focused on playing chess, and said in a low voice, and then, I don't know what the head of Yuan Church was thinking, but he actually agreed to the challenge. Xian Feiling's expression was strange. Unfortunately, 10,000 years later, although this old guy stepped into the transcendent realm, he was still defeated by the head of Yuan Church. Then, this old guy obediently followed the head of Yuan Church to Yuan Church. After hundreds of years, he became the head of Yuan Void Pavilion. But not many people know that this old guy has been suppressing his anger. He swore that he would fight with the head of Yuan Church again in the future, and he could only win, not lose. Lin Sun was shocked. He vaguely guessed it. So, Senior Taishan has been in seclusion here and has been dealing with himself, trying to grasp the power to win? Xian Feiling nodded. Yes, he has been suppressing his anger for 80,000 years. His voice was full of sorrow. Taishan, such an amazing existence, but in order to defeat the head of Yuan Church, he had been struggling here for 80,000 years. How great was his perseverance! But Lin Sun thought more. How terrifying was the head of Yuan Church, that Senior Taishan couldn't find a way to win. He couldn't help but ask. Xian Feiling laughed and said, This question is in the hearts of everyone in Yuan Church. Even if you ask Taishan, I'm afraid he won't dare to give you a clear answer. It can only be said that the head of Yuan Church has already reached the Eternal Realm. As for how high he is, no one knows. Eternal Realm. Lin Sun gasped and then asked, What realm is Senior Taishan in? Xian Feiling's eyes were complicated, and he said, Among the 3 pavilion masters, if there is no accident, Yu Beihai should have a great chance to reach the Eternal Realm within 100 years. Yan Ji has a problem with his state of mind. Otherwise, he should have reached the Eternal Realm a long time ago. As for Tai Xian, speaking of this, Xian Feiling said helplessly, He is better than Yu Beihai and Yan Ji, and he stepped on the eternal path one step ahead. Lin Sun was shocked at once. P.S. If I have been dealing with myself for a long time, I'd rather be myself. This sentence came from Shi Shua Xianyu.